Ladies and gentlemen, you have tuned into the Rebel News Ontario election live stream. I am David Menzies, and my co-host is Tamara Ugolini. How you doing there, Tamara?
Well, I'm happy to be here in studio with you tonight, David.
Yes.
Yourself?
I'm doing great. I voted at the advance polls, which I'm very happy for because according to the old Timex here, if you haven't voted, you have exactly 59 minutes to get your butt down to your polling station. Although in some polling stations, there were some glitches, I understand,
Yes.
and they've extended the time anywhere from 10 minutes to 1 hour so that they're playing it fair and square in terms of having that 12-hour window because the polls opened, of course, at 9 a.m. I voted in the advance polls, as I said. How about yourself, Tamara?
I actually scrambled this afternoon to vote because I hadn't quite heard from my local candidates, some of the alternative candidates. And
Okay,
so I
then.
really wanted to get a better feel for who they were as individuals before deciding to cast my ballot. So I waited until almost the last minute. I mean, I voted this afternoon. And it was funny because in the polling station, so, you know, I always pay a little bit more attention now than obviously in past. And so you vote and you hand it to a person who reads it through a machine. And then so I wanted to clarify a little bit because there seems to be some misconceptions in Ontario how our provincial election votes are counted. And so the consensus from the woman who didn't seem to know a whole lot, but just enough, I guess, to make me feel a little bit better with the answers that she was giving me. So they go through the machine and then it's counted. And then at the end, I guess they hand count them further to ensure that the votes match up with what the machine said.
Okay.
So I guess that there's some glitches in some of the other ridings, and maybe they're bigger ridings where they're using only electronic machines. Do you know anything about that, David?
I don't. I just know about these technical Oh, come on, Tamara. You know me and technology. I can barely operate this darn thing, and it's supposed to be the easy one. But of course, that I can understand how that would make some people nervous, glitches in the machines,
Yes.
machines, going down. Where have we heard that before? Mm-hmm. But basically the format of the next hour or so, folks, is that we're going to reach out to, several of the candidates or the party leaders, at least the ones that would agree to come on. That wouldn't be, of course, the incumbent, the Premier, Doug Ford. If you're aware of what happened to us going to the Ford Nation event last night, suddenly journalists that were welcomed with open arms are now persona non grata. We'll run the video evidence of that later on. So we're on a tight schedule, and it begins just in 1 minute, where we are going to have Tamara Ugolini, the leader of the New Blue Party, Jim Karahalios, on. And if the K word rings a bell, it's because, well, of course, Belinda Karahalios, she has the Cambridge seat.
Yes.
She used to be a progressive conservative. By the way, how many progressive conservatives have been drummed out of caucus in the last 4 years?
In 4 years, apparently it's 9. I was trying to go back and find who the original rebels were of the Doug Ford caucus that were kicked out, but we know in the last 2 years alone there's at least 4.
Right. And
so Belinda was one of them.
And for no good reason, speaking out against lockdowns. I mean, certainly that's what Belinda did. That's what Roman Baber did. When it comes to Rick Nichols, he did not acquiesce to getting the vaccine at the deadline. He was threatened, get the jab or lose your job. And guess what? The Premier, he came through on a promise for a change, and he kicked out Rick Nichols. And there's so many more.
You can't forget Randy Hillier as well. He was one of the earliest dissidents.
But so that's going to add some spice to this this election for sure. And I believe we have Jim and Belinda Karahalios standing by. And Jim, Belinda, can you hear us?
We sure can. How's it going?
Great.
Hello.
Well, Belinda, you must be very excited. Less than an hour to go before the polls close. You are indeed the sitting MPP for your riding. What is your prediction? What have you been hearing when you've been door knocking? I know you've been putting in tremendous effort into getting reelected. What's going on?
So it's been very, very busy in the riding of Cambridge. We have many volunteers, been knocking on doors since day one, getting the signs out, doing media, the little bits when I'm offered them. And if they get it right, it's great, but not like you guys. And it's been good responses at the doors, and it's very different from 2018. But I'm not making any predictions. All I can say is that we've been working very hard, and we're staying hopeful. But of course, we're anxious as well.
Well, certainly the riding of Cambridge is one to watch in terms of whether you as a member of the New Blue Party can recapture it, Belinda. And Jim, I was thinking of you today because, your party last month put out that incredible video of Doug Ford giving that $500 million a year gift to Torstar, the parent company of the Toronto Star. And remember, once upon a time, Doug and Rob referred to the Toronto Star as a, quote, bunch of maggots, end quote. Suddenly they're getting Christmas presents on steroids. And I was thinking of you today because I picked up an issue. It's very rare that I actually pay for a copy of the Toronto Star, but because it's the election. And look at this, Jim. Here's the front page of the Star. I don't know if you can see it, but a third of the front page is an ad for North Star, that is Torstar's betting company, and the headline is Bet on Blue. Bet on Blue on Election Day. I'm sure they don't mean New Blue. I think they're inferring blue, which is, of course, associated the color with the progressive conservatives. Is this part of the quid pro quo, Jim?
Could be, Dave. In that interview we did, you called it. And we're pretty proud, though, Dave, that the Toronto Star are not fans of the New Blue. I think we're wearing that with a badge of honor. They've done their best in the last few years to make us seem like outcasts. Never had a good thing to say about Belinda. And we were calling out in this campaign the online gambling license that the Ford PCs gave the Toronto Star and many other policies that the Toronto Star doesn't like to write about, doesn't like to talk about. So they're not fans of ours, Dave, and definitely they don't mean the New Blue. But we're going to keep talking about the things the Toronto Star doesn't like and the establishment parties don't like. And thankfully, not many people read the Toronto Star nowadays, Dave.
Yeah, and
Apart from you.
Yeah, a few articles, and maybe I've got an excuse to buy a budgie now. I've got something to line its cage. But Jim, honestly, this is not by accident. Bet on Blue. There's no sports team called Blue. The St. Louis Blues were eliminated from the Stanley Cup tournament a week ago. This is, and what I'm getting at, Jim, is that can you explain how Doug Ford and Rob Ford, the late great ex-mayor of Toronto, they had a visceral hatred to the mainstream media, especially the Toronto Star. How do they get this gift? How does this even happen?
Well, the lobbyists are running the coup at Queen's Park, but let's not confuse Rob and Doug. Rob was
Correct.
A principled politician. Rob had a dislike for the Toronto Star because they continually went after him until they broke him. And they would go after Rob because he was a principled conservative who defended the taxpayers like no one else. Doug is not Rob, and Doug needs the praise from the Toronto Star. He needs to be praised by the establishment, and he's happy to dump all over the supporters that made the Ford Nation name and made his brother. And look, let's just be honest. He's riding on the coattails of his brother's name. Let's be honest. And Doug Ford, as Premier of the province of Ontario, despite everything that he's done in the last 4 years, the fact that people are still willing to give the PC party their vote, and many people who watch The Rebel, I've seen them online with their commentary, are voting for him again. It means two things: the incredible inertia of the establishment brands, PC and Liberal, and number two, what an amazing politician Rob Ford was, that his brother, with all his incompetence and all his left-wing, wanting the left to love him and the establishment to praise him, is still able to maintain some support because his brother built this incredible brand that Doug has dumped all over in the last 4 years.
Well, Jim and Belinda, I'm sure Tamara has a question for you, but one quick anecdote. Video just went up recently on our rebelnews.com channel and our YouTube channel, and it was our visit last night to the Ford Nation event. And I'm beginning to think, Jim and Belinda, the world is completely upside down. I've been going to Ford Nation events for a good part of 15 years. When we went this time, we were greeted with uniformed police officers and told to get off the property right away or be arrested for trespassing. And I even brought a cherry cheesecake, and they still said no. I was treated like a bum, and I was given the bum's rush. And yet the mainstream media vipers that have always had a hate on for the Fords and Ford Nation, the red carpet came out. Like I said, the world's upside down. What do you have to say, Tamara?
Well, I'm just wondering, Jim, one of your comments the other day was that, it's no longer possible to change the party from the inside. And I wonder if it ever was possible, as we saw, of course, Belinda was kicked out of caucus for advocating on behalf of her constituents. And do you think that it's possible to show the PCs, Doug Ford, that, they're losing a lot of their base during the outcome of this election?
Well, they've already admitted that, Tamara. They've openly had their strategists in the back tell the establishment media and praise, and they're boasting about the fact that they're replacing their values and principles and their voters with the voters of Justin Trudeau. So it's an open secret, or it's not even a secret. They're boasting about it. They're praising. The one benefit they have in this race is they didn't even release a platform in this campaign. I don't know if everyone is aware. I wasn't aware until a couple weeks in. They're just running on that budget that they tabled on the last day of the legislature and ran out of the building before Belinda could ask them questions about it. And they're getting through this election because they're hoping as few people in Ontario know about that there's another option, the New Blue Party, and there's an alternative option. And this election has put us on the map. And every day, including today, we've had people reaching out saying, what a breath of fresh air. There's a new party. There's a New Blue. I hope you don't go away. I hope you're going to stick around, and that's what we're going to do. You don't have to skip votes going forward. You don't have to put up with work from the inside, or this is the best we can do. There was a time when we believed we can work from the inside, and we didn't know any different. I grew up in my dad's fish and chip shop. My mom owned a hair salon. We're not products of a political class, and we thought when you have free and fair votes and nominations, you can work from the inside. Well, the PCs did away with nominations and elections. What a way to get rid of voter fraud. Just cancel democracy. They don't have conventions, and they are maintaining their grip with the people in charge of the levers of power. And so there is no working from the inside, but there's working with the New Blue Party of Ontario. And you guys started off this question talking about trying to get into the PC's party yesterday. Well, the good news is that everything starts for the New Blue Party today, and we're going to have in-person conventions, policy conventions, where we're going to discuss policies, and we're going to have hundreds of people, just like we had over 600 people at our launch in the beginning of this campaign in Cambridge, and you guys will be invited. So there will still be grassroots democracy in Ontario. It just won't be with the PCs that have turned into the Justin Trudeau party in Ontario.
Apparently so. Well,
Thanks,
Jim,
Jim.
Belinda, thank you so much for your transparency. Thank you for your time. We've run out of racetrack here. Maybe we can touch base later this evening after the polls close. And we'll see what happens in the next, 46 minutes. And thank you again for making time for us. We really appreciate it.
Thank
Best
you
of
both.
luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, there you go, Tamara. It's always thrilling to speak to Jim and Belinda Karahalios. They come across as the real deal to me. Well, they talk to us. They're transparent
they're
to
open.
us. And look at the contrast with Doug Ford, not just with Rebel News, but in the last few days of campaigning. Did you notice? Doug Ford will be available for a photo op at such and such a place. No media questions, right? No media questions. He's almost turned into no more comments lady that
He has.
kook at the on Wellington Street
Yeah,
in Ottawa. The only thing that's missing is that witch's hat, but
and some rainbow hair.
yes. Do warlocks wear hats of any kind, Tamara?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I usually steer very clear. But yeah, I think that Ford, as he continued on the campaign trail, he really started to take separate himself from the media, the media party, mainstream or otherwise. He seems to be kind of taking a chip off the old block of Pierre Poilievre, who won't engage with any form of media, independent or otherwise.
And I don't like that. And it's funny because Pierre Poilievre made the case when his interview with Jordan Peterson that he admires and supports the independent media. and then he's very skittish about sitting down and giving us a full interview, which is odd. For Doug Ford, most of the polls, and I don't know if they're accurate, well, we're going to find out very soon, folks, but it's showing that he's due for another majority government. And, well, you know what, time will tell for certain. But what I'm getting at, Tamara, is maybe his handlers say, well, everything looks like we're on the right track. Let's not let Doug Ford get out there, take a media question that's a gotcha question, say something enormously controversial, and we're going to lose. So it's run silent, run deep, as they say in the submarine business.
Well, and it apparently seems to be working out well so far for Doug Ford. He seems to be polling quite ahead of the other parties, especially the Liberals, who appear to be being otherwise decimated in the pre-polls that we're seeing.
Well, that was shocking in 2018, what happened to the majority Kathleen Wynne Liberal government to be reduced to, it's such a great line, I love it, the minivan party, right? 7 seats, right?
7. Which,
of course, is much better than what happened to the federal Conservatives in, was it 1993? When they were reduced to the Mazda Miata party, 2 seats, right?
Wow.
So, yeah, I know that's maybe before your time.
I'm looking in the camera going, well.
Yeah, but tales from Grandpa's rocking chair, I suppose.
It's nice to have your historical context, David.
Yeah, I was around then. But I think who we have up next is indeed Rick Nichols.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't see...
Not ready yet. So, well, let's talk about what the polls are indicating.
Yes,
now, of course,
please.
in 2018, the Doug Ford PCs won 76 seats. That gives them a majority because in Ontario, it's 124 seats. That means the magic number for a majority is 63. So the Ford government is going to have to lose 13 seats. But, Tamara, all the polls I have seen show the Ford PCs getting 80 plus seats, actually gaining. And I'm going to tell you something. I find this election absolutely baffling. Look at the major issues. Of course, the economy, gas prices, food prices. You know, you're a mom. You know, all that is through the, pardon me?
Housing as well.
Housing, the cost of energy through the roof. Healthcare is either tied or a close second. Doug Ford vowed to get rid of hallway healthcare, as he called it. He pointed to how his brother was brutalized by the system back in the day. It's gotten worse. Usually, these are signs, bad signs, for an incumbent, for a sitting government, but the polls say otherwise. Do the pollsters have it wrong, or how do you explain this, Tamara?
I wonder if people recognize that under any other government, how much worse off we would have been. And so that leads me to always, we're picking the lesser of the evils. And I think we have Rick Nichols now. So I know we're on such a tight schedule. So let's go to catch up with Rick Nichols here quickly.
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Nichols.
David,
So good.
how you doing?
I'm doing great. And here's my colleague, Tamara Ugolini. No, it's been almost a year since we first met. If I recall, it was last August. You were given that cruel ultimatum of either get the jab or you're out of a job. And as I said earlier, the Doug Ford kept the promise. In that case, you were thrown out of caucus. And now here you are running as an independent. Rick, what do you make of this election? I was just saying to Tamara, usually when you see the cost of living skyrocketing, as we have seen, usually when you see major healthcare issues, this is very bad news for the incumbent, but all the polls are showing the Ford PCs might have an even bigger majority government here in 2022. Are you buying that, or do you have other theories?
Well, first of all, the only promise, as far as I'm concerned, that Doug Ford kept was when he threw me out of caucus because I refused to get the jab. But you know what I mean? Look, I'm now with the Ontario Party. I'm the deputy leader of the Ontario Party. Derek Sloan is our leader, and I'm very excited about that. I've been hitting the streets. I've been talking to a lot of people down here. Of course, when Doug took everything, kicked me out of caucus, all the monies that I had for the for the riding association went over to the new guys. You didn't have to fundraise, and we started at ground zero. But you know what? With a name like Nichols, Dave, I can run a campaign budget or campaign on a dime, so to speak. But you know what?
Good line.
Going back to your question, the polls. The only true poll is today.
100%, and we're just about 40 minutes away from the polls closing, Rick. Well, most polls, that is. Now, Tamara Ugolini, I mean, the COVID-19 and the politics behind COVID-19, that is your bailiwick. No one follows it more than you do here at Rebel News. First of all, what did you make of the fact that Mr. Nichols had to face an ultimatum like that in the first place?
Well, it just was in line with what everyone else was dealing with. It goes to show that no one was immune from this awful knee-jerk government response that was implemented by the Doug Ford alleged Conservative Party. What was the campaign trail? What has it been like for you on the ground there, Mr. Nichols, as you've canvassed? And are you garnering a lot of support? Do you have any faith in reigniting the seat that you currently hold?
Well, I certainly have a lot of faith in doing that, Tamara. But one of the challenges that I have, of course, is that with the new party, people are a little bit concerned about it. But I would tell them that, listen, I'm no longer with the Doug Ford Liberals. I'm with a true Conservative Party, the Ontario Party, and our values are truth and transparency, something that Doug doesn't do. Faith, family, freedom, and of course, fiscal responsibility, something else. I was in the last day when the legislature sat. They presented the budget. It was nothing more than a high five pep rally, as far as I was concerned. They can promise anything, and then they'll say, well, yeah, but we didn't debate it, we didn't vote on it. So what I'm hearing at the door, I get a lot of positive people saying, oh yeah, Rick, we know your story, and we didn't like what happened. Even people who have been vaccinated. I don't like to use vaccinated because in my opinion, it's not a vaccine. However, having said that, a lot of people are very supportive. I've had a few doors slammed in my face. That's okay. Even when I was a Conservative back in my first, second, and third terms, I had doors slammed in my face. So I'm kind of used to that. But that's one thing about politics. Your skin gets thicker, your shoulders get broader. But I will say this: every once in a while, one of those flaming arrows from the opposition find my Achilles heel, and I go, ouch! Now that one hurt. But you know what? I'm being optimistic. The polls aren't showing it, but I'm not paying any attention to those polls because I said earlier, the real poll is today, and we'll see what happens. I think that I could be a sleeper and come back in and reclaim my MPP-ship, as I call it.
Rick, but I got to ask you a question. I hear this all the time from people that given how many MPPs were thrown out of the PC caucus, given that we have multiple alternative parties, the Ontario Party, the New Blue Party, wouldn't it have made more sense if somehow you could have all got together? Because then we're talking, a significant degree of critical mass, of traction in terms of elected MPPs. Why do people have to choose between, well, I guess the two front-running alternative Conservative parties would be indeed the Ontario Party and the New Blue Party. What is the answer there, Rick, in terms of why you couldn't get together as one entity?
Well, David, that's a great question. If Doug had thrown a few more people out of caucus, we'd be in the majority and he'd be in the minority. Yeah. Kind of the way it goes. But to answer your question, Derek Sloan and I reached out to the leader of the New Blue and to his wife several times, and they just ignored us. Their story is going to be different, obviously, but we wanted to work together. And if nothing else, we said, look, let's not put a New Blue in Rick's riding or Derek's riding, and we won't put an Ontario Party candidate in Cambridge, and I think he's running in Kitchener-Waterloo, if I'm not mistaken. So we wouldn't do that. But you know what? He said nope. And so I'm faced with a New Blue candidate. Nice person, but again, they're going to take votes away from me. And I got thinking afterwards, his intention is not to win this riding because he knows he won't, but to make sure that I don't win. And that's how vindictive he is. And I don't agree with that at all. And then you have, on the other hand, you've got the Liberal candidate in my riding that all of a sudden, due to dirty tricks from the NDP and saying, oh, well, they didn't have the proper signatures and so on, it was too late. Finally, and then they attacked her family. She quit. So now all of a sudden it's just the NDP on the left, Doug Ford on the left, me on the right, and it's unfortunate. And I took offense to that. I said to another in another interview, I said, look, regardless, Liberal voters should have a Liberal candidate to vote for, and the NDP and their dirty tricks, eliminated that. And I said, I don't think that's fair, because that's me. You know me, Dave. I'm a fair play kind of guy. I don't like those kind of antics. Never have and never will. So again, you know what? We tried to work with New Blue, but New Blue wouldn't have anything to do with it. And he says he had 124 members in the, running in all 124 ridings. We had 105. And okay, so we had 105. But I would hope that if, in fact, they get seats and we get seats, and Doug Ford ends up with a minority, not with what the polls are saying, those makeshift polls, as I call it, then maybe he will be forced to work with us and us work with him, and we'd be forced to work together for a change. That'd be a novel idea, so that we could then have impact with the Ford government, because he's a minority and he needs us to help him get a majority so that he can pass legislation that he wants, not without first our input.
Boy, what a fascinating scenario that would be. I mean, I'm so sorry, Rick, we're running out of time. In fact, our next guest is indeed Derek Sloan, but imagine that Ford coming to you for help as opposed to coming to you with a threat of getting an experimental vaccine into your body or you lose your job. Would that ever be an incredible ending to the COVID-19 saga, such as it is in Ontario? So, Rick Nichols, thank you so much for your time, and we always appreciate it, sir.
Mm-hmm.
David, thank you. Tamara, thank you so much. And hopefully we'll be talking in the future. Take care.
You got it. Take care, Rick.
Bye now.
Well, what do you make of that? But Tamara, I got to tell you, each side has a different story about this.
Of course.
I think, and this is just a theory, maybe this is ego-driven. Everybody wants to run the show. Everybody wants to be the trailblazer. And
It's politics.
I know, but, check your ego at the door and think of the big picture. Yeah. And because it saddened me to see the attacks each party was doing on one another when really, for the most part, politically speaking, and they're on the same page.
They really are.
It just splits the alternative conservative vote.
Yes, absolutely. And I hear it so much when I'm out speaking to people, or when I'm covering these events or other events or protests, or just out as a person. I hear it from so many people that why didn't they just join together? Why couldn't they have joined together? And so you had the New Blue, who worked very hard to develop and get their new party off the ground. And I think that they have great marketing. I personally really like their logo and how much hard work went into that. And then you have the Ontario Party, who was already an established party that Derek Sloan became the leader of and kind of reignited that party. I think it was first came to fruition in 2018, if I remember correctly. So I think both were quite headstrong, right? They each had their respective parties, and one just came to formation within the last year. I don't remember when exactly New Blue formed, but it was more recently than the Ontario Party, for instance. And so neither one wanted to give that up. And
I even saw on our trip last Saturday to Ottawa, not many, but I saw PPC of Ontario signs, or PPO.
So it's the People's Party
okay.
of Ontario.
Right.
And it's it's the Populist Party of Ontario.
Is that actually a registered party?
They are, and I was contacted by someone who was running in it, and unfortunately, by the time we got to speaking, it was just yesterday, and I said, I'm sorry, I can't get to an interview with you by the time election night rolls around, which is obviously today, right now. But yeah, it's the Populist Party of Ontario. It's the purple signs.
Right.
And so that is a fairly new party, and I unfortunately didn't have time to look further into it. But the woman and I, she's actually a nurse who lost her job due to the mandates, and so we're we're hoping to touch base after the election just to go over her story and where she ended up and what happened with the election night.
So she has something in common, obviously, with Rick Nichols. That's
So
for sure.
many of them out there.
Yeah.
It is really sad to hear people still, students, a lot of students are still facing being segregated from continuing their post-secondary education due to mandates.
Well, you know, I just wish they could have buried the hatchet, because I like Rick Nichols. I like Belinda Carahalios. I think they're genuine people. I think
Yeah.
they're straight shooters. They always have time for us. And if it would be one big unified party, maybe
I think there
that
would have been a good,
I think
good
so,
run for
you
it
know.
anyway.
And speaking of the Ontario Party, well, look what we have here. We have Derek Sloan, the leader of the Ontario Party. Mr. Sloan, how you doing today? It's election day. Oh, do we have a audio issue?
We might be frozen here.
Oh, okay then. Well-
Sometimes those rural connections, you know, I can relate because I have been dealing with internet issues for several months now.
Well, you're in the Cobourg area.
Yeah,
correct,
Northumberland, yeah, in the
Okay, then.
Northumberland County region. And it's so, some areas have the Bell 5 high speed, and then other areas just across the street, as seems to be the case in my area, not available to have that capacity to run Skype or Zoom. So I don't know if, I know Derek's in a similar rural setting.
Well, we're going to try to fix that. And I can't remember, Cobourg, as you drive east from Toronto, are you before or after that Big Apple thing?
Just before.
Just before. Okay.
Yeah, so that Big Apple throughout COVID had a mask on.
It pissed me off to no end.
so
and
much. The poor
finally,
kids.
What we're talking about, folks, there's a store called the Big Apple. It's actually wonderful. They have such wonderful delicacies in there. And but they have a giant big red apple you can see from the highway, and they painted a mask on it, and now they've taken the mask
It's
off.
now
So
off,
good
thank
for
goodness.
you, Big Apple.
Yeah.
And speaking of Big Apples, our head honchos, we do indeed have Derek Sloan, the leader of the Ontario Party here. Well, Mr. Sloan, how are you doing tonight? Looks like less than 30 minutes before the polls close. Are you optimistic, sir?
Well, listen, we're really excited. We've obviously, our entire team has been pounding the streets. We've been handing out tens of thousands of pieces of literature. We've been participating in debates all over the province. We've been doing, television ads, radio ads. We've been getting the message out there. The freedom message, the anti-globalist message, the fiscal responsibility message, that has been getting out there to people all across Ontario. And so that's the main thing. Obviously, as a new party, you don't necessarily expect to win government your first time at the plate, but we're here fighting hard, and we've changed the conversation, and for that I'm proud.
Most recently, Derek, I interviewed, or I covered a rally, rather, that Tom Marazzo was holding in Peterborough, and I saw a very strong showing of signs in that riding. Are there some ridings more than others that you feel more confidently about?
So some of the ridings where we have high-profile candidates. So Rick Nichols, obviously, is an incumbent member provincial parliament. Myself, I'm known in my riding. Tom is a high-profile candidate. So some of these ridings, Essex is another. Essex as well as Oxford are both the ridings that are strong for us. So I think we're going to show strongly in those ridings. Winning obviously is a challenge, but we certainly have a shot at winning a couple of seats. We'll see what happens. Obviously, nobody knows the future.
And Derek, speaking of the future, the Cassandras out there, by that I mean the pollsters, most of them, or all of them, I should say, they are predicting a Ford PC majority government, maybe even the Ford PCs winning more seats than they did in 2018, which was 76 seats. I see projections of 80 plus in some polls. It's baffling to me, Derek, because we look at the economy with the cost of living, the cost of energy, housing, the healthcare system. These are all terrible files right now. And usually that spells ominous news for an incumbent sitting government. And yet we have all these projections of Ford making gains. Do you think the pollsters are wrong, or is there something here that I'm not seeing happen in this Ontario election?
Well, I think there's several things going on. One is that I think there is a lot of dissatisfaction with the federal Liberals. And so the natural inclination for many people is to vote Conservative provincially. I also think, unfortunately, a lot of Canadians still have yet to wake up to the mismanagement that the Ford government had during COVID-19. So I think that's part of it. And I also think that Ford is sort of winning on the coattails of sort of managing in a crisis. And you know how whenever a crisis happens, the incumbent government, unless they really mess it up, gets a bump in the polls. So I think that's part of it. And the other part of it, too, is the other parties are just really lousy. I mean, the leadership in the Liberal Party and the NDP Party is awful. And I think that, frankly, the average person who hasn't tuned in yet to some of the other alternatives, Ford gets the benefit of that.
And, the statistics by the pollsters would back you up on when it comes to the leadership people, Derek, because one poll indicated that more than 50% of voters wish that all three main parties had different leaders. That's, quite a damning statistic. What do you make of that, Tamara?
Yeah, well, I think that leads to the fact that there needs to be the stronger showing of the alternatives. People are not happy with the mega parties who are mostly just the uniparty at this point, and there needs to be some strong opposition to hold the feet to the fire, hold some accountability, and that's what me personally, at least, I'm hoping to see as we move forward into this election, knowing that there are some other options, but not everyone does, and so that, I think, is a major shortfalling in this election, and seeing the way that all of the uniparty has responded throughout the COVID pandemic.
In all this comment, we've heard from Elections Ontario so far that election turnout up until 5 o'clock was actually very low. So there is some indication, there's been some other articles saying that, this election, not many people care about it. So I think there is this idea that, people, a good chunk of people don't like any of the major parties, but they still have yet to learn about some of the alternatives. So this was a great run, this election for our party and some of the other parties. And I think we can grow off this in the future.
Well, nothing bothers me more, Derek, than voter apathy. There is absolutely no excuse not to go to the polling booth and cast your ballot. And I mean, even if you dislike every single candidate, every party, you can go and you can decline your ballot. Imagine if, say, 3 or 4 million Ontarians, instead of just sitting at home and not voting, went to the polling booth and said, I'm declining my ballot. I don't think any of you are worthy of my vote. What a message that would send. I think when you see people around the world dying to achieve democracy, when people here who have it and take it for granted, I think that almost makes a mockery of the system, quite frankly.
Well, I agree with you. It is a good thing for parties like us, because people who support parties like us, we have, 95% voter turnout for, close to 100%. So the fewer people who are voting for these other parties, it actually does help parties like ours. So it evens out in the end. But I agree. I wish more Ontarians were tuned in and awake to what's going on in our province.
Yeah, and certainly, Tamara, the weather, at least in the GTA, is not a factor. It's like almost perfect conditions. It's sunny, warm, not humid, no rain. I mean, what excuse do you have to stay home?
Well, in a riding of a family member of mine, they've lived in that house for approximately 20 years, so they've seen a lot of canvassing happen in the neighborhood, and they said that this year in particular, the Conservative MPP is canvassing so hard, they've come around the neighborhood about 4 or 5 separate times, and even today they came to offer rides to the polls.
Yep.
So I think that the Conservatives are feeling the heat on this election, despite the polls, what the polls are saying. I think some of these individual ridings where they've lost a lot of their base, they're starting to see the repercussions of ignoring their constituents for the last 2 years.
Well, I really hope that.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dark.
Sorry, Dave. I'm just going to say I really hope that they do worse than they did last time. Frankly, they don't deserve to do better. There's a general apathy and a mistrust of all the mainstream parties, and I really hope that the results today reflect that in some way.
And Derek, we're just about out of time, but I agree with Tamara's saying, and I think, one of the tipping points in terms of the base voters, the grassroots voters of the PC party came just over 2 years ago when Doug Ford referred to the protesters on Queen's Park lawns as a bunch of yahoos. And these were people, almost all of whom I spoke with, admit to voting PC back in 2018. They were losing their jobs. They were losing their livelihoods. They were losing their businesses. They were peacefully protesting. And to be described that way, a lot of people said that was Doug Ford's Hillary Clinton moment when she said the basket of deplorables. And I say, no, it's worse, because Hillary Clinton was talking about Trump supporters, the opposition. Doug was demonizing his own base. And I think those people that were so upset in the last 2 years about how this lockdown was proceeding, I can see them staying at home or spoiling their ballot. Last word goes to you, my friend.
Well, listen, I don't know if the Dominion voting machines recognize spoiled ballots. That would be funny to see. We'll see what happens. Obviously, everybody knows I'm against these mail-in ballots and these voting machines. Some of our internal polling has definitely shown our party at much more strength than what some of these mainstream polls are showing. So we'll see what happens. I mean, listen, I'm going to take the results with a grain of salt. We're going to keep fighting no matter what happens. Whatever happens tonight is small in comparison to the work that needs to be done. And we're going to keep moving. We're going to keep spreading the word on all these important issues, whether it's freedom or digital ID or any of these things. And we're going to wake up Ontario to make sure that when the time is right, we can bring a government in that actually respects people, that actually stands up for families, and that actually will put freedom on the agenda again. So that's my commitment to you and the rest of the country, and particularly Ontario.
Great. Well, Mr. Sloan, as always, thank you so much for your time. Greatly appreciated.
Best of luck.
Glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So there you have it, Tamara, the leader of the Ontario Party. And as much as all these polls are suggesting another Ford majority or even super majority, if you look at some of these polls, I think there was one that even projected 88 seats.
Wow.
I know, which would be phenomenal in terms of the numbers. And remember, the magic number, folks, is 63 for a majority. The thing is, I think, I can't remember, I referred to this earlier in the show, Tamara, but I remember very well 1990 when it was a Liberal Ontario government. David Peterson was the premier then. And we woke up to a majority NDP government in Ontario. Nobody saw that coming, not even Bob Rae, the leader of the NDP party in Ontario in 1990. I don't even think he had a victory speech prepared. It was kind of like, say what? And the only point I'm trying to make is that nobody forecast that. Absolutely nobody. It was a earthquake-like tremor that hit Ontario in, I think it was the month of September 1990. And I'm just saying, for what it's worth, sometimes, despite all the science and the due diligence, Tamara, the pollsters get it wrong.
Right. And do the polls even include the fringe parties? Would they even include the Ontario Party and the New Blue? Well,
they always have other. One of the polls I saw anticipated for the New Blue Party doing as well as getting 5% of the vote. That's on the high side, but that's within the potential of the New Blue Party, according to one pollster. So, I'm not sure how each polling organization drills down. Obviously, they're concerned with the top three plus the Green Party.
The uniparties.
Because they do have an MPP under the Green banner.
Yeah.
And, like I said, 1990 is a shock that reverberates to this day. And I'll tell you, I mean, as bad as the Bob Rae government was, when you look at subsequent governments, the Bob Rae NDP almost come across as fiscal conservatives the way they're spending money today, right?
Dangerous.
But from Bob Rae to Randy Hillier, I believe we have Mr. Hillier on the line right now. Randy, welcome to the Rebel News live stream coverage of the Ontario election. What are you hearing out there, my friend?
It's always great to be with a bunch of rebels. So thank you for having me on. And be an interesting election. It seems that there's been a lack of interest from what I'm seeing around the countryside. No, I'm not sure if your other guests are seeing the same thing.
How can that be, though? There's such pushback on the policies and the things that the Ford government has done. How can you rationalize that there is this seemingly disinterest from the voters?
Well, we saw the same thing in the last federal election, which I thought was the most critical federal election in our country's history. But we actually had a lower voter turnout last September than previous years. And I think, there's a lot of factors that go into play. One, of course, is no political party is seen to be reflective of a large percentage of Canadians, and people choose just not to be engaged. Mm-hmm. I think it's also a reflection, elections and democracy is said to be a reflection of our society. And I think that's very true. We see, I don't know if it's apathy, but there's certainly a lot of people who in Ontario and Canada who don't have any regard for freedom, don't have much regard for their community, see the lens of their lives through their paychecks and not much else. So, we just see a continuing decline in interest in our governance and in our communities.
And Randy, I was saying to Tamara and our guests earlier, I find this election utterly baffling because typically when you have an incumbent government and the economy is, ravaged by inflation, I mean, my goodness, you go to the gas station, you're paying more than $2 a liter. I still can't get that number around my head. You go to a grocery store. I was shopping yesterday, Randy. I figured I've got about $25 worth of groceries in my basket. Turned out it was $86. I would really be a big failure on the Price is Right. The point I'm making with the economy, with the way the healthcare system is, Doug Ford promised to end hallway healthcare. He did not do that. That usually bodes as a disaster for the reigning government. And yet we have these pollsters saying, nope, it's going to be perhaps even a bigger majority. Like I said, Randy, I find it baffling. How do you make sense out of it?
Well, I think a lot of the people that are being impacted and affected by the cost of gasoline, by the outrageous increase in food costs and housing, they're also the ones who don't see any solutions in the political horizon. I think those are the ones who are most impacted with the failures of our government, who are most likely not to be engaged. The white collar public servant who has not been hurt what one iota through the last 2 years, or the people who have received handsome wage subsidies and rent subsidies and whatnot. They still have benefited from the largesse of government. So I think those are a couple of factors. I think we're seeing that our culture and our society has changed. When I was younger, an economy like this, runaway inflation, would see a great influx and increase in voter turnout. And that's what you need. Every time an incumbent government is removed, just about exclusively, it requires a surge in voters to remove an incumbent government. This one's going to be interesting because I don't believe the polling has captured fully we've seen a number of the polls showing that the minor and upstart and new parties are totaling in about 10 or 12% of the vote. How that is distributed across the province, we're unsure of. But I think there will be a number of pockets, or potentially a number of pockets, where that other vote could spell some trouble for Doug Ford. I don't see him getting more seats than he got last time. He's certainly in governing territory, that's without question. Also due to the abject failure of Andrea Horwath and Steve Del Duke and Mike Schreiner, in failing to provide and articulate any reasonable option or alternative to Ford.
What's happening in your riding, Randy? You've been a stronghold there for, I don't even know how many consecutive years or elections. So what is the feeling like where you are?
Well, it's again, we're seeing a real lack of interest. As you drive around the riding, the number of signs on private property is minuscule. It's hardly noticeable. We have a big field here. We have 8 candidates. We have all the major parties. We have and then we have the upstart parties, the Populist Party of Ontario being represented with my daughter Chelsea as a candidate, as well as the Derek Sloan's party, the Ontario Party. We also have a couple of independent candidates as well. So I think there's one of the things that you can see. There's an interest and recognition by many people that they have to do something, and they're being engaged and seeing 8 candidates. But the corollary or the flip side of that is a very disengaged and uninterested electorate by and large, from what we're seeing so far.
Again, it's baffling to me, Tamara, given all these factors, and also another factor that we didn't talk about too, Randy, because it keeps coming up whenever we go out to Queen's Park and speak to the anti-lockdown demonstrators, this feeling of betrayal that almost everyone I've ever spoken to, and I say, do you mind me asking how you voted in 2018? And almost 100% the answer is the Doug Ford PCs, and yet they were demonized as a bunch of yahoos by the Premier. He would never come out and meet them. I suspect maybe they don't want to vote for a left of center party like NDP or the Liberals, and maybe they are the ones en masse staying at home.
I think there's an element of truth to that in accuracy, David. There's a nuance in politics that a lot of people don't recognize. But although about 80% of the turnout is loyal turnout people that will vote for the blue party, the green party, the orange party, those about 80% historically fit into that category. They're not going to be moved. They'll either stay at home if they're not happy or get out if they're encouraged. And part of that is this, again, a reflection of society where people want to be on the consensus side or the winning side. So, I'm not sure how this is going to play out. I know that there's probably, my best estimate is there's about 20 to 25% of conservatives who are absolutely outraged and disenchanted with Doug Ford's government. But will they stay at home? Will they go to one of the new upstart parties? Or will this tendency or this this desire to be on the winning team bring them out again. I'm not certain, but that is an element that I've seen in my 15 years in elected office, that there is a great number of people who want to make sure that they are on the consensus or the winning side.
And Randy,
And
I have heard that, but I don't understand that. I mean, if the polls were indicating that the NDP was headed to a supermajority, I'm not going to say, oh, I want to be on the winning team. No,
Because we're rebels, David.
Oh yeah. Well, not that rebellious, I'll tell you. So I think you're right, and I've heard this theory before, but Randy, for the life of me, I don't understand it.
Well, if you can understand what's going on in our country, you're a much better person than I. Yeah. But look at, we've seen, the orange wave or the orange crush with the NDP, where people get on a bandwagon. Yeah. We've seen that in various stages during the Mulroney sweeps. This does happen, and the mainstream or legacy parties use this very effectively, and they come up with terms such as vote splitting. Don't vote for the PPC because that will just get Trudeau in. They really reinforce that brand loyalty and be on the winning side. It's a complete distortion, and it's a complete contempt of the design of democracy. You should be voting strictly and only for the best person that most closely resembles your values. That's how the system is designed. Yep. Who best represents your values and who you have confidence in, who will be your best advocate. But clearly we know that is not the way the system is working now. Most people are aligned strictly by a tribal function, just as we see so much of society is polarized. Politics has become exceptionally tribal as well.
Well, Randy, we're going to have to wrap it here. I appreciate your time. I think the last time I saw you, you were in Nathan Phillips Square in Toronto, and you were in a fight with a megaphone, and you won. So I think you know what I'm talking about. But Randy,
I do.
It's a fascinating election, to be sure. Thank you once again, sir, for your time. Greatly appreciate it.
Well, the other important part here, this is the very first election where every ballot will be tabulated by a Dominion voting machine.
Oh, gee.
The first time in our province's history that a provincial general election is not going to have any verification process on the outcome. So stay tuned. I think there'll be more to come after 9 o'clock.
Wow. Where have I heard the name Dominion voting machine before?
Gee, I wonder.
Randy, thank you so much again for your time, sir.
Thanks, Randy.
Thank you.
See,
got it.
that's
Have a
where
lovely evening.
that's where I get a little bit hung up, because I specifically asked the woman at the ballot box that question to find out in a roundabout way, and she, however it ends up happening, or whether it's happening in every riding, I'm not sure, but apparently they're being hand checked thereafter to make sure that the tabulation matches what's counted by hand. So
Well, let's hope so. I mean,
yeah,
we want a level playing field. We want a fair game. We don't want any shenanigans, because this is precious, our system. And I guess we shall see. But
and we shouldn't take it for granted.
No, absolutely.
So it's 9 o'clock now, and I guess we have our very own rebel Andrew Chapatos coming on next. But I thought in the meantime, we might throw to your Doug Ford video from last night just to give a little bit of context.
Yeah, folks, the video tells the story. It's, it was shocking to me because, again, it's another indicator of how the world is upside down. Rebel News, persona non grata. This is the organization where Doug Ford in 2017 pitched a weekly show, which never happened because the team won't let me do it. So I think that tells you a lot about Doug Ford's leadership style. And so we're persona non grata, yet the CBC, the Toronto Star, all the media outlets have made his brother's life a living hell. Come on down, get the red carpet out. But anyways, we were invited this time to a function. Turns out that invitation wasn't worth the paper it was written on. Check it out. David Menzies for Rebel News here at the Toronto Congress Centre. And folks, I'm here for a Ford rally. And guess what? I have an invitation from Premier Doug Ford himself. Check it out.
Hey, this is Doug Ford calling, leader of the Ontario PCs. You can reach our team at 1-800-903-6453 or email at info@ontariopc.com. I'm inviting you, your family, and friends to our rally in Toronto to get it done. It's Wednesday, June the 1st at the Toronto Congress Centre, 650 Dixon Road in Etobicoke. Doors open at 7 p.m. and there's no cost. That's Wednesday, June the 1st. At the Toronto Congress Centre, 650 Dixon Road, and doors open at 7 p.m. With your help, our PC party is building Ontario and keeping costs down for families like yours. Head to ontariopc.ca. Click on rallies and please RSVP to let us know if you're coming. Admission is free. I hope to see everyone there.
Yeah, that's what came across my phone just a few days ago. A personal invitation, as far as I can tell, from the Premier, and I'm very grateful for that, folks, because you see, when we were here last month for the campaign kickoff, well, I was shocked because I've been going to Ford Fests and Ford family events for maybe 15 years. I'm always welcomed with open arms. Not this time. Check it out. I understand why.
You leave now.
Why?
Zach?
Why is that?
Because we're not giving you accreditation to this event.
Then.
So yeah, we're going to ask you to leave this.
Under the Trespass and Property Act, we will remove you from the...
Okay, who are you?
I work for the party, and I'm...
Okay, can I see some ID then?
It's right here, sir.
It just says Tour 2022.
Yeah, we're going to have to ask you to leave.
Okay,
Please.
what is your name then?
So we have uniformed police on site that will come and remove you.
I don't even know.
Hold on.
Can I ask you why? That's a fair question. I see other media here.
You're not invited to the event, and you're not checked in. You're not coming into the event.
But do you have to be invited? I see all sorts of people coming in
Everybody
here.
here is invited, and they're all here for the right reasons. So.
Yeah, so I was considered persona non grata, the same with Joe Warmington of the Toronto Sun. And it's inexplicable because Joe Warmington, I think, has given the Ford family the fairest coverage over the past 20 years. And he was given the bum's rush as well. But we are indeed here on an invitation basis, so they can't possibly kick us out again, or can they? Oh, and by the way, just to show I'm a really good guest, well, a good guest doesn't come empty-handed. I have a gorgeous cherry cheesecake for the Premier. We know he loves cherry cheesecake. Check out the video evidence.
I'm gonna pour this on, but if you don't like cherries, eat blueberries. If I wasn't Premier, I'd open up a cheesecake factory. That, my friends, is the Premier's cheesecake. Friends, stay safe, stay healthy, and these are some of the fun things you can do when you're self-isolating. Oh, oh, oh.
So there you have it, folks. A party awaits, a cheesecake awaits. Let's go and join the revelry, or not. Hi, guys.
Unfortunately, it's a private event tonight.
Oh, I know that. I've been invited.
You have not been invited in, unfortunately.
Here you go, officer. Listen.
Unfortunately, you're not invited in today.
Oh, I am. Listen.
Well, according to the party, you're not invited in today.
That's not true. I have an invitation from Doug Ford. Here is a printed transcript.
That's not an invitation.
Oh, you're the fellow that kicked me out last time, too.
Yeah.
Who are you, by the way?
My name is Zach, and I am...
Zach who?
That's it. My name is Zach.
Zach.
Yeah.
Okay, then. Well,
I'm an election team member. My name is Zach.
Okay. Are you a security guard?
Security representative for the party.
Okay,
yes.
can I see your security license, please?
You can see my tour badge if you like.
No, I'm not interested in that. That could be anyone's. If you are...
I am telling you that you're not welcome here based on the Trespass to Authority Act.
This is...
It's okay. It doesn't even matter. The gentleman doesn't have to show you, but you're just not welcome here, okay?
Here is a transcript, sir.
I would appreciate you. I would appreciate you. Please, just oblige me, and you're not welcome here, okay? I
You
have.
film on the street there. That's totally fine. Where the other.
Oh, is that right, Zach?
Yeah, you can.
Really? Okay. How much do you charge the haunted house, by the way?
What?
Yeah. No. I have an invitation.
Sir, can you please make your way to the sidewalk, please?
I don't think you outrank the Premier of the province, sir, and I have an audio invitation. Okay, then. So why does the Premier invite me, and then you guys say, not only am I not invited, you won't even give me a reason why I'm not invited?
I just told you why you're not invited.
No, you didn't. What is the reason?
You're not
This is a
invited because
private
you've
event.
tried this before and we didn't allow you in. So
For 15 years, I've been coming to Ford family events. 15 years more. And I've been welcomed with open arms. Is it too much to ask to get
you're
it?
trespassing now, so you can make your way to the sidewalk.
I'm on the sidewalk.
You're not the
right here.
sidewalk.
Not on the sidewalk.
This entails
What?
private property.
Yeah.
Where those
Sidewalk
people are
out
standing
there.
right there. If we could ask you to please.
Who is the private property owner of this building,
The
sir?
Toronto Congress Center.
Okay, so is this taxpayer supported?
No, it's a private entity.
All right. Well, folks, we tried, and even with an invitation,
You're feel free to cover and record us, but we're just going to ask you to go.
Oh, that's very generous of you, officer. I really appreciate that. You see,
What happened to the cheesecake?
If you tune in to that video, folks, you will see the final fate of the cherry cheesecake. I'm not going to give it away. You got to go to rebelnews.com or the Rebel News YouTube channel.
We
and
could
you'll
have indulged tonight. Election cheesecake. Ford would have been jealous.
Please, Tamara, you don't have to worry about this. For me, it's been a long winter, okay? I'm
At
trying.
least you're not touting health.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks, Doug. Stay healthy. By eating that? Are you kidding? And by the way, I've heard from people in the baking community that the Doug Ford recipe for a cherry cheesecake, it is 2 thumbs down. It's ghastly. I had the quality stuff. And like I said, tune into our channel, folks, and you'll see what happened to the final fate of that beautiful cherry cheesecake. And, well, look who we have now. It is our beloved colleague, high energy, Andrew says, Chapados. And, I mean, the rumors abound, Andrew. Are you doing a little moonlighting for Yacht Rock Radio, channel 311 on Sirius XM? Because I'm telling you, that announcer's voice is a dead ringer for yours, my friend.
You know, David, we all have our little side hustles and things we like to do on our free time. I'm not particularly familiar with what you're referring to at this moment, but I'll definitely check it out.
Okay, well, bit of an in-joke, but what is not a joke is what's happening right now, Andrew. We've had some of the various alternative party leaders and candidates on in the last hour and a bit. And, well, let me ask you, my friend. You live out in the Durham region, I do believe. What is your take on this election, Andrew? I find it baffling. I find it borderline weird, given the polling numbers. What do you say, my friend?
It's going to be interesting to see if somebody like Aaron O'Toole, who is from my neck of the woods, gets reelected by a populist that's probably going to reelect a progressive conservative. So I'm kind of wondering if they're going to, disavow him a little bit. They didn't want him to lead the federal party, but do they want him to be, a person that represents them moving forward? Obviously, that's in a different thing. But what I'm getting at here is that I don't see how some of the people in Ontario particularly vote one way in a federal election and then another way in a provincial election. Like, we see how many conservative premiers there are across the country, but most of those people seem to be fine with what Doug Ford is doing and what Justin Trudeau is doing, because I don't think they're that dissimilar from one another. Doug Ford is better at making infrastructure deals and getting transportation going a little bit better than Justin Trudeau's not doing that at all, for lack of a better word.
Where's
But
the
it's very interesting. Exactly. And it's going to be interesting to see how, people parse these waters in terms of how do you justify not liking Justin Trudeau's locking everything down and travel restrictions, and Doug Ford basically allowing the same thing, allowing Walmarts and what have you to stay open while shutting down all these businesses. So it seems like there's a little bit too much party favoritism, whether it's historical voting, I want to stay with that party, my parents voted for them, or I just don't like red versus blue. So I'm interested to see how many of these independent parties gain ground. I know New Blue is polling a little bit higher than I expected. The Green Party, maybe people don't really know what they stand for as like a real globalist party. But I'm wondering how good these smaller parties are going to do, even though people seem to be saying, David and Tamara, that Doug Ford's probably going to win more seats tonight in this election and have an even greater majority.
That's what the polls are saying, Andrew. But I think you touched upon something I want to delve into a little deeper, Andrew, and that is the history in Ontario, which for the last 100 years, more or less, when you see, say, a Liberal federal government in office on Parliament Hill, it tends to be a progressive Conservative government at Queen's Park and vice versa. There's something about, I don't know, the Ontario voter, which I can't quite put my finger on, that they like sort of a counterbalance in terms of who's in Queen's Park and who's on Parliament Hill. And maybe Doug Ford and Justin Trudeau both realize that, because we've seen Doug Ford almost campaigning with Justin Trudeau, showing up at photo op. Meanwhile, I don't think, and Tamara and Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, did Justin Trudeau show up at one Stephen Del Duca event? It's incredible. So is that at play here, that both Justin Trudeau and Doug Ford, for their own selfish self-interest, realize that it's good for, if it's Team Red on Parliament Hill, it should be Team Blue at Queen's Park?
Well, what people have said over the years is Canada and Canadians vote out people. They don't vote people in. They get fed up with somebody like Stephen Harper for 11 years, and they vote him out. And then they get fed up with somebody else, apparently not Justin Trudeau, but they get fed up and they vote the person out. Stephen Del Duca, I was reading this morning, people expect him to lose his own riding, which would be just hilarious if you ask me. I guess the platform he came out with, which was terrible, which was kids, you must be vaccinated to even get into school. I guess that didn't resonate with parents. It would be funny if he lost, and Justin Trudeau, when he was campaigning, it seemed like with Doug Ford at electric car plants and other events, and you could say that it was good that they got along, even though one's federal and one's provincial, and one answers to the other. But in my eyes, it's not good when people who are supposed to be polar opposites are getting along that well. I expect them to work together, but I don't expect them to work that well together. Like, would you think like Trump is getting along with like Gavin Newsom and their buddy at events? You wouldn't really think that. It might be a bit more stark of a difference, but I still think it relates to how close the ruling, the ways that they rule of Justin Trudeau and Doug Ford actually are. They're not that dissimilar, as I said. Like, you get more random highways opened under Doug Ford, I'll give him that. But you still get the gas prices, you still get like the social justice, you still get him kicking people out of events, like you saw just a few minutes ago of yourself, David Menzies, when you tried to just give him a wonderful gift of a cheesecake. I rue the day when I see somebody turn down a cheesecake, David Menzies. And furthermore, they're keeping out not just people who are like yourself, where they've had 15 years of experience, as you said, talking to Doug Ford, going to his events, even as you famously tell the story of he wanted a show on Rebel News one given time. But they're also kicking out left-wing people, as you saw that, I don't know how to pronounce her name, but she takes people's cartoons, pretends that they're theirs, and goes on Dean Blundell's terrible show all the time.
Karima Saeed.
There you go. We all have trouble saying her first name, but bless her for trying to get in. I don't think that should be kept out from any of these events, even if it is to go and cry on Dean Blundell about it after 12 people. But I digress. And I think that Doug Ford is being hidden from the voters. He was on this campaign trail. He didn't take any questions, any straight interviews. You can't go into his events. You can't ask him real questions. And I'm hoping that people are going to see that, but I don't think enough. I don't think enough people saw it. I don't think this campaign was long enough for anybody to make a real decision outside of what they've already, preconceived as the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we see some votes are slowly starting to trickle in a little bit here.
Oh, okay then.
So I think we have them pulled up on screen, the Ontario votes. So, yep, Conservatives are definitely in the lead thus far, it appears.
And these are very early returns,
there's
of course,
some
right?
solid. So the solid there is elected, and then there's the more graded are potential. I'll turn my screen brightness up for you there, David. So for anyone
We can see it.
viewing there, and then if you click on show more results, you can scroll through and see. I didn't realize how lengthy this list was of
So our tax dollars at work here.
other
at
parties.
CBC.
Well,
Yeah.
and one of the other parties, the name alone is baffling to me, and it's what do you make of this, Andrew Chapados? The Ontario Moderate Party. I mean,
Yeah, there's a lot
it
of
sounds like a
different
bunch
ones.
of librarians
Well,
got together and went into politics.
Consensus Ontario.
What about
None
the
of the above
Communist
direct.
Party of Canada brackets Ontario?
Yeah,
Like, get
and-
your stuff together here. Where are you campaigning?
And I don't know if that's the
That's,
case this year, but often you have the Communist Party on the ballot, and you also have the Marxist-Leninist Party on the ballot. It's like, hey, you crazy Marxists, can't you all get along and just form one party? I mean, how far apart are you if it's the Communist Party versus the Marxist-Leninist Party?
But don't
How
we
many
feel
people
that
are gonna?
on the other end too with the New Blue and the Ontario Party?
Indeed, I
But
agree.
who actually look to have a decent showing so far. So you see the Greens are at 6.8%, New Blues at 3%, and
That's good.
Ontario Party's at 1.7%.
What is your analysis, Mr. Chapados?
Vote Communist Party, I believe. No, I'm just kidding. What's interesting to me is there has to be some sort of disconnect between what people believe some of these parties stand for and what they actually stand for. I'm like, the Green Party is an admitted globalist party. They have a global party where that receives funding from the entire world of Green Party parties. They all stand for the same thing. They're not like this environmentalist party that people thought they were like 25 years ago. They're just an even further left NDP party. And then when you look at Andrea Horwath, who is one of these NDP leaders who they just keep throwing in, even though they do seemingly worse and worse every time, maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit less, her and Jagmeet. And their first order of business, what was it? Free dentistry and children transitioning genders. Like, who does that appeal to? Who's just waking up in the morning and be like, you know what, this government is falling apart. We have no money. Gas is through the roof. But if only those teens could get transitions free of cost, then we will be saved. So I wonder how much people actually read into these things at this point. And Stephen Del Duca, as Dakota Christensen puts him, as the turtle guy. Like, it's kind of being handed to Doug Ford at this point, which I don't necessarily want anybody to vote for one particular party, but just go off the board for once, people. You don't know anything about these candidates, then go off the board. It's clearly not working what we have, or maybe you think it is. Maybe you think that 202, when we drove home today, is a great price for gas, like an 80-cent increase in the last 3 months. Maybe you think that's good. Maybe you think inflation is good. Maybe you think, like sending money to Ukraine is amazing. So there's some people out there who just think this is a great way to live. And, I think one of those people is David Menzies.
And Andrew, I just
I'm kidding,
wonder,
of course.
If, of course, the NDP fail to form government, which is probably likely, and maybe even fail to become the official opposition, surely this is Andrea Horwath's last kick at the can. It's number 4. No major party leader in Canada has ever gone up to the plate for a 5th time. If Stephen Del Duca fails to win his that seat in Vaughan Woodbridge, surely that's curtains for him. So could we be seeing 2 resignation speeches at the end of the evening, potentially?
I think if Stephen Del Duca fails to keep his seat, then obviously he can't be the leader anymore. I'm not so certain about Andrea Horwath, as we see some people. Where is this? The Ford Party, which David Menzies will not be invited into. That's a racist flag in the right that Union Jack, I believe, is what we're led to believe. I don't know if they'll fire Andrea Horwath. I mean, the NDP and far left groups in general, you tend to fail up. Look at Kamala Harris. She is the biggest failing up politician in the history of Western society, I think. I think Andrea Horwath might stick around, David, even if she wins. She's got 2nd place right now. I mean, I don't know if this is a bad sign that people are going further and further left and right, maybe.
Oh, I would put money on it that you're wrong on that account, Andrew, because I understand even within the NDP caucus, there's a little club called the 901 Club, and it's so named because if she fails again, they want her to resign 1 minute after the polls close. So I think
holograms they're showing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's dissension in the ranks. She's been the leader, I think, Tamara, for 13 years. So her best before date is really coming up there. Any last thoughts, Andrew, as we go on during this night?
Yeah, CBC, you see what 1.7 billion of your dollars gets there. A bunch of people nobody's ever heard of talking about a holograph. But I think what we're going to see tonight, David, is same old, same old. Doug Ford's going to come out. He's going to smash a cheesecake onto the ground in victory. I don't think the Liberals make any movement other than the fact that they'll go back to a bit where they were before. And I'm gonna do a famous David Menzies bet on Andrea Horvath. She gets fired, $25. How about that?
Okay, you're on. $25. That almost matches the bet I have with our colleague Lincoln Jay. I don't know if you know about this, Tamara. We have a bet. What comes first? The Leafs win the Stanley Cup or I die? I'm betting on the Grim Reaper. Okay. Yeah,
Are we including inflation in this bet?
Because
that could be worth millions in the future if we're factoring inflation.
Okay. Well, Andrew, thank you so much. If indeed narrating Yacht Rock Radio, Channel 311,
I don't know what that is
your side hustle, you get back to work, my friends. Spinning
another
those,
episode with David Menzies. Steely Dan's up next, everybody.
Steely Dan.
Thank you for
love
watching.
Steely Dan, my friend.
Sorry for being underdressed, you guys. I appreciate you both. You're doing a great job. Have a wonderful night.
And it's nice to see you're supporting such a woke company as Levi's, Andrew.
You know,
he
I
definitely
should have just worn a
green.
jean jacket, I guess.
Okay, then. Andrew, thank you so much for your time, my friend.
So,
See you guys later.
CBC is projecting PC majority. There's pretty much, it's a landslide.
Already?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it's safe to say.
And right now,
and that's why they were partying in the Doug Ford event.
Where would that be? Incredible.
Somewhere
you might not
in South
believe this.
Etobicoke.
Oh, it's okay then.
Wherever it was last time in 2018, it's the same venue.
That would be the Toronto Congress Center
That's
where I
it.
went last night. Should I go again, folks, for a third time?
You wanna
get
head down
kicked
there?
out under threat of
We should just get some party hats and say we're here to party and we have some cake.
You know, it's only about 20 minutes away, but I'm not going to push my luck. I think they're going to go from threatening to trespass to threatening to shoot to kill, perhaps.
Yeah. The last time I was in jail was after I walked the beach shoreline.
Yes.
And it's not a pleasant place. That was my first and hopefully only time to ever actually be incarcerated.
Wait a minute. Was that a different day? I was there. I think your father got arrested and cuffed, but I dove into the Coburg Beach water in my full suit.
That's right. In your suit, you lost your hat that day.
Yeah. There goes another.
No, there wasn't quite the same showing the day I was arrested. Unfortunately, just a friend and I walking the shoreline.
And for context, folks, what Tamara's referring to
sorry.
is that in her hometown of Coburg, Ontario, they have a beautiful beach. Typically, when it's not a COVID year, they have a wonderful sandcastle contest. I think it happens in August.
So many events
there. And it's the water's gorgeous. The sand is like you'd find in the Caribbean. And the town council fenced it off under penalty of law. We've had 2 sweltering summers in 2020 and 21, and you couldn't get into the water. And but there was a loophole. If you went up the pier and went down these treacherous rocks that are very slippery, then you could get in the water, because I think that's federal jurisdiction. And the most surreal conversation I ever had with a bylaw officer was when I went in the water and I swam towards shore. So my feet still have water cascading over it. And the bylaw officer is walking on the beach as I'm walking in the water. He's keeping an eagle eye on me. And I said, by the way, what's the rule? Because I don't want to breach it. I don't want to get a ticket. And he says, the rule is your ankles. And I go, what do you mean? He says, if I can see your ankles above the water, you're getting a ticket.
That's right.
You can't make this up. Right?
Oh, it was just such a mess. No one knew what they were doing, flying by the seat of their pants. But this is law enforcement. You can't just fly by the seat of your pants with this stuff. So anyway, yeah, we don't want to be spending any more time in prison.
No, we don't.
Detained.
We don't.
For
I mean,
absolutely ridiculous things. I mean,
look
can
how
you
lovable
imagine?
we are, folks. Who would want to incarcerate Tamara Ugolini and me? Well, at least
I don't
Tamara
think
Ugolini.
they did. They really didn't want to do it, but there was just no way that it was going to pass otherwise, unfortunately.
Holy smokers! Am I looking at the projection correctly?
So this is, yes.
66
Yep.
seats for
66 seats for the Conservatives, and that's only, I don't even know how many of the ridings are even in. Oh, we can zoom out of this map here below.
And keep in mind, folks, as we mentioned earlier, 63 is the magic number. That's what you
Yes.
need for a majority government. So they're 3 over according to these early projections.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the number for the Liberal Party? Are they still the minivan party?
Yeah, they're only at 10 seats total currently, but this is,
Okay,
of course, not all the polls are in.
Well, 10 that exceeds a minivan, they're in minibus territory now.
And then look at an independent. New Blue has 3.2% share, and Ontario Party is 2%. The Greens have 6%. So that's a pretty decent runner-up behind the Greens.
It is, but do keep in mind the system as we have it, Tamara, as you well know, the popular vote doesn't mean anything. Ask Mr. O'Toole, ask Mr. Scheer, both of whom won the popular vote in Canada in 2021 and 2019. But it's all about winning ridings, right? And right now, it looks like the pollsters are right. Despite all the problems, despite the lockdowns, despite gas at over $2, grocery bills that are just unbelievable. Normally, the telltale signs that spell doom for an incumbent party, it's opposite day, isn't it?
It is truly a bizarro world that we live in. Look at it, 68, 68 projected seats, 32 indefinitely.
And
thus
again,
far,
Tamara,
28 minutes after.
This Ontario tradition of about a century now of Ontarian voters, whoever's in Ottawa, they want the opposite in Ontario.
That was an interesting way to look at it.
And, well, but I mean, over the last century, that's the way it's been. And maybe that's played a factor to it. Almost you want a counterbalance. You don't want...
But it's not. There's no counterbalance. They're just the same.
Well, that is true.
There hasn't been.
There's a great political cartoon. I think it's the best cartoon of the year. It was in the Toronto Sun a few weeks ago. And it's Justin Trudeau on a motorcycle, and on one sidecar is Doug Ford wedged into the sidecar. On the other sidecar is Stephen Del Duca, and Trudeau with his left hand is taking the pin out of the connector for the sidecar to the motorcycle. So as they're going around the bend, Del Duca's going off a cliff. It's basically, the point is,
That's what happened.
Justin Trudeau and Doug Ford are best of friends, buddy, and begone Stephen Del Duca. And it's probably because, as Doug Ford realizes this whole counterbalance thing is good for him, Trudeau realizes it's good for him too, right?
Well, now we have the CTV News has confirmed that NDP will be the official opposition. Green Party leader Mike Schreiner, he won his seat again. He's in the riding of Guelph. Del Duca is trailing by 26%.
Ooh.
And Andrea won with 33%.
Even so, I don't think she has a future with the party in terms to go to the plate for the 5th time. I've heard rumors she has her eyes on becoming the mayor of Hamilton, which is her hometown. But even if she is going to be, the NDP rather is going to be the official opposition, you can't go back a 5th time. I mean, this is almost, the definition of insanity, isn't it?
But again, something we've seen throughout the COVID narrative, repeating the same things over and over and expecting a different result. It is literally upside down, bizarro world. And don't forget too, for anyone tuning in, you can join us on Rumble, Odyssey, or Super You and contribute into our super chat. So it's a nice way that we can gain some momentum, monetary momentum, and also for you to engage directly with us. If you super chat us on one of those 3 platforms, you can ask us a question or engage with us on the live stream. So we already have one here from Jetta Bursey, I think is how I would say that. $1, thank you. 2 sides to each story, and the truth is in the middle. I wholeheartedly agree. And that is why I think it's so important to have independent media, because you have the mainstream and they're just parroting each other and the same things, and then you have the independent, and then it's up to the viewer to decide where the truth may lie and discern for themselves. So I completely agree. So if anyone wants to contribute to some super chats, head on over to Rumble, Odyssey, or Super You, and you can super chat us there. 5 Libries, LBRY, sends us a fancy emoji on Odyssey. I don't know if we can pump that up on the on screen there.
Oh, it looks like somebody in a like a flame retardant suit.
Yeah, they're flame throwing.
What
something?
is he or she incinerating?
I have no idea. Tell us.
Yes.
Tell us, 5LBRY.
Is that supposed to be Doug Ford as the flamethrower? I don't know.
So here we have some gains and losses too. I don't know. As of a few minutes ago, the Progressive Conservatives are up 5 seats. Democrats are down 8. Liberals are up 2, and the Greens sits at 0.
All right then. Any more chats there that we must read, Tamara?
Not yet. I'm still trying to figure out what this little piece is. I don't know if did we end up showing it on screen? Sorry, I should have been paying better attention.
I don't think we got it big enough, but if that viewer can kindly reach out to us again and explain what that means.
Maybe we're just not.
Maybe we're just not
into
cool
the new.
enough.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't mean anything
too
obscene, we shouldn't be showing, but I don't think so. By the way, let me just check out to our super producers. Do we have our next guest ready?
Oh, yes.
No, not yet. Okay, then. So we have a special guest in the
We're
on
very
deck
late
circle.
though for him, unfortunately.
We are.
So we may have missed that ship. May have sailed.
It could be.
Do you want to throw to that video while we wait for some more results to come in?
And which video would that be?
The wiretapping.
Oh yes. Well, I should have known. This was the guest that we had planned. We're going to reach out to him, see if he can come on. But it's incredible, folks. We were tipped off last week that somebody was the victim of a law enforcement wiretapping. We didn't believe it. We thought this person was a crank, and then he proved it with a letter he received from the Ontario Attorney General's office. Without further ado, check out the video. Efren and I jumped in a car, went out to Ottawa, interviewed Mr. Rob Stocky, and his story is equal parts egregious and, well, downright terrifying, to tell you the truth. Check it out. And I'm told to give our super producer a second. So
yeah, to think that these kind of things are happening in the True North Strong and Free of Canada. Wiretapping, we spoke a little bit before we came on the live stream. Wiretapping's reserved for hardened criminals.
Tamara, we're talking mafioso types. We're talking terrorists that are hell-bent on mass destruction or mass murder. These are the people that law enforcement go before a judge and say, we need to get a wiretap for this reason, to prevent a tragedy, to prevent horrible carnage. But what was Rob Stocky's sin? Well, when we got the video running, it appears to be that in Justin Trudeau's Canada in 2022, all that you need to get a wiretap on your phone, folks, is to be thinking on the wrong side of the political spectrum. I know it's unbelievable.
Scary.
Here's the evidence.
Demonized and vilified all the way to the invocation of the Emergencies Act. Now, speaking of government overreach, I want to introduce you to my guest. His name is Rob Stocky. He is a former police officer, and the story he has to tell about what happened to him as a result of the trucker convoy is equal parts egregious and disturbing. We plan to get justice for those citizens who had their privacy rights trampled upon by government and law enforcement. You can keep up to date with our efforts in this regard by visiting stopthewiretapping.com. That's stopthewiretapping.com. We're going to come at this from 4 different angles. First, we have to tell the story, because the story of the Ontario government wiretapping political dissidents is so outrageous that if we don't have the proof, no one would ever believe it. Then we've got a petition that we will deliver to the Attorney General of Ontario and the Federal Public Safety Minister if we find out the federal government was involved in this also. Our petition calls on the AG to stop the wiretapping of Canadians whose only crime is peacefully opposing government policy. Our third plan of attack is as follows. We want to find out the scale and scope of this wiretapping operation, and we want to know who exactly was wiretapped. We have an anonymous intake form at the same website, and that is stopthewiretapping.com, where you can submit your information, and we promise you, you will remain anonymous. So, Rob, thank you so much for joining me today. As I mentioned in the preamble, you recently received a letter from the Attorney General of Ontario's office dated May 18th, 2022. And what did that letter say?
First of all, David, thank you for having me on your show, and thank you for covering this very important story. It's very important that the public hears about what's going on because it is so egregious. On the 18th, I received a letter from the Attorney General of Ontario basically explaining I was actually the object of intercepted communications, which is a wiretap. So for people who aren't familiar with the language, the police wiretapped me under the criminal code, presumably for participating in the Freedom Convoy on Parliament Hill.
And this was news to you that you were wiretapped. I understand, Rob, that after a certain period of time, the rules are that you have to inform the subject of the wiretapping that he or she was indeed wiretapped. So that's why you got the letter. What was the reason for the wiretapping of your phone?
Well, if you look at the letter, which I've provided, there is no reason provided. It just says that I was the subject of a wiretap from these 2 dates. And if you look at the actual section that I was wiretapped under, I was wiretapped under a section of exigent circumstances, meaning that the circumstances were so urgent and so worrisome about criminal activity that the government did not have time, or the officers investigating did not have time to qualify all of the potential issues and reasoning why they're getting this wiretap. So this wiretap was not only an emergency type of wiretap, but it was also allowed to be done ex parte. And what that means is there is no defense, there is no one to hear the opposite side of why this wiretap is taking place. It is valid for a maximum of 36 hours. That's the maximum window because it's such an exigent circumstance type of wiretap. If the offense or the reasonable grounds you actually have to have under the criminal code continues, you can apply for an actual wiretap. It gives you the time. So police are not losing potential evidence that they could get. I am not involved in any criminal activity. I have done nothing wrong. I am very conscientious about the things I say and do, both word and deed, because I have watched the media, the legacy media I'm talking about, completely lie about what actually took place on Parliament Hill.
They didn't say why your phone was being monitored, but what do you think is the unspoken strategy there? Why did somebody decide that we have to listen to Rob Stockey's private conversations as a matter of national security?
What?
Absolutely incredible. And folks, as promised, our next guest is indeed the subject of that interview, and that would be Rob Stockey, who is also running for the New Blue Party in Ottawa. Rob, are you there, my friend? Hey, Rob, how you doing? David Menzies here with my co-host, Tamara Ugolini. You know, Rob, we ended the clip on you talking about how the mainstream media, basically, you really can't trust them to deliver the news. And, you know, your story is so incredible in terms of a breach of privacy that I thought we were going to have the proverbial media snowball after we premiered your story, which I believe was 2 days ago. And you know what, Rob? Lo and behold, breach of privacy is in the mainstream media. It's all over. But it's this. Here's today's National Post. Tim Hortons mass invasion of privacy. They're more concerned. And I mean, I agree. I think Tim Hortons was offside, but this was somebody signing up to an app. There was all these terms and conditions. It looks like Tim Hortons allegedly might have breached that in terms of where you're going. But this pales compared to you, an ex-law enforcement officer, somebody with no criminal record, being the recipient of a wiretap. And I think the biggest question of all, Rob, is this. What did those members of law enforcement say to that judge or judges to get this? What was their elevator pitch in which they said, we must monitor the conversations and the social media sites of Mr. Stocky because he is a threat to national security, or what? This is the biggest question of all. What do you think, Rob, they said to have this egregious invasion of your privacy granted in the first place?
Well, you know, in seriousness, I can't think of anything that they would have done. If I was to approach this somewhat, you know, lighthearted, but still seriously, I'd say maybe I parked over the line once in the past 3 years when I was at the grocery store. I mean, that's probably the extent of my, you know, law-breaking activity. Like I said, I volunteer at a lot of places, run businesses. I have employees. I have 2 wonderful children. This is beyond me, where they could come up with any sort of reasoning to convince a judge. The only thing I can think of is, you know, do I say the word lie? Did they lie about what they were actually putting in this document to convince to my phones and my electronic devices?
You know, Rob, I think you're right. And as we discussed on Parliament Hill, I get this vibe. It's like a weird combination of 1984. That would be the wiretapping into the whole Big Brother is watching you, or in this case, listening to you. And also the film from 20 years ago with Tom Cruise, Minority Report, where we have a pre-crimes unit. We get our information from psychics that we think really, really have a good hunch that Rob Stocky is going to commit a crime in the future, and we better monitor him. Of course, in the film, they would arrest you, convict you, and you do time based on a hunch. In this case, it's just listening to your private conversations on a hunch. Is that where we are at in Justin Trudeau's Canada in 2022?
Well, clearly we are. We are there. And I just want to reiterate that, you know, you're absolutely correct about this not being in the mainstream or the legacy or the Trudeau bot media. The only place that people can get news nowadays, legitimate news, things you'd want to hear to know what's going on, is stations like yourself, news services like yourself. It's the independent media that's actually informing the public. And to some degree, it's the intelligent public that's figured out that the regular legacy media is propaganda. It's not informing us of it. As a matter of fact, I suggest that it's even dumbing down the population because there's nothing of value. Like it's painful for me to watch. The stories are so irrelevant. There's so many things happening in the world right now, and what is the mainstream pushing? Johnny Depp and that other lady, I don't even know her name. It's mind-boggling. And the comparison that you make about the Tim Hortons privacy breach, I mean, give me a break.
It's unbelievable.
It's worrisome. It's worrisome.
You know, Tamara, what do you make of this? Because if it could happen to Rob Stocky, an upstanding citizen, ex-police officer, no criminal record, I would suggest it could happen to anyone, especially us at Rebel News. I could see somebody going to a justice and saying, well, you know that Tamara Ugolini, the stuff she's writing about COVID-19, it's dangerous. She's a threat to the health and well-being of Canadians. I mean, what would be your reaction to being wiretapped based on some trumped-up theory like that?
At this point, not surprising. I would not be surprised, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's sad.
And I'm thinking ahead, too, to when Canadians can finally actually leave the country, when we can fly. Are we going to see a mass flux of people fleeing Canada? Because look at the state of affairs in this country. It is deeply concerning and troubling and very scary, slippery slope. I mean, when you first told us about this story, first of all, it's shocking, but at the same time, as I've stated, not surprising. Yep. And it begs to reason that are we actually next? You know, am I to be receiving something of similar in the mail any day now?
Oh, Tamara, as I mentioned, I'm sorry to say this, Rob, when we first heard your story from your own lips, we thought you were a crank. It was so preposterous that someone like you would be wiretapped, and then you showed us the evidence, namely that letter from the Attorney General's office that put it right in black and white. Yes, Mr. Stocky, you were a subject of a wiretapping. Nowhere in the letter does it say the reason why. I think that's shameful. I think in the interest of full disclosure, that should be there. But thank goodness that we had that evidence. And but we're going to continue to monitor this story, of course, as it goes on. You have been in contact with others that have been wiretapped. So that's the other big question. How many Canadians, especially those involved with the Freedom Convoy, have had their phones and other electronic devices wiretapped? Hopefully we'll make some headway there. But this is election night. You are a candidate for the New Blue Party. Based on what you're seeing right now with the early returns, Rob, what's your analysis?
Well, you know, it's amazing how in seconds, the election of the polls closing, literally seconds, they've declared for the new majority leader of Ontario. I think that's incredible. I wonder, I mean, there's some stuff going on in the background right now in regards to the ability to verify with paper ballots, with scrutineers, whether or not these results are accurate. I mean, that's probably a conversation for another day. But you know they say, win without boasting, lose without excuses. I agree with that on the premise that the game was fair. So I'm concerned a little bit, given what I've seen so far. I'm not sure how far I can go into it. But one thing that's interesting, I did notice that the leader of the Liberal Party lost his seat. That was kind of some breaking news for this evening. But what can I say? I can tell you this: running for politics, running in politics was absolutely amazing. The amount of people that I've heard, recurring themes that I've heard at the doors, and it just makes me wonder. You know, if truly Doug Ford got this majority after wiretapping me, breaking the law, forcing people to have jabs against their rights, which is absolutely illegal. It's just a matter of fact that he holds the government right now, but in law, that's illegal. All things he's got away with, and now suddenly he's won a majority again, whereas I'm hearing at the doors, one of the biggest concerns is the distrust of government. Mm-hmm. So how does someone who I keep on hearing in my riding, which is a conservative riding, where so many people are talking with the distrust of government, win such a huge majority and the scrutineers aren't allowed to count the ballots? You know, there's a lot of weird things happening, and we are living in interesting times. There's no other way to put it. We're living in interesting times.
Well, Rob, I agree. I think it's downright baffling, this election, compared to so many I've covered in the past. And a constant theme Tamara and I have been discussing is that you look at the economy in terms of fuel prices, in terms of what you're paying at the supermarket right now. Inflation is out of control. Healthcare is a mess. These are the top two issues on the minds of Ontarians. Usually that is a disaster for the incumbent ruling party, but apparently not this year. What is your take on that? Well,
you know, you summed it up. When you look what we have We have rising inflation. People are having trouble keep making ends meet. A lot of people have lost their homes because of the mandates. A lot of people who volunteered for me said, Rob, I have to volunteer for you. I'm the victim of my job because I want to protect my health. I want to protect my health in a good way. So we had tons of scrutineers out tonight. We had tons of helping with our signs and even members of the public. Lots of my clients were voting for you, Rob. We know your character. You got it. You got this. And there was a lot of excitement. When I looked at the numbers, based on the conversations I've had with people, they're unbelievable. Now, if I was to be able to have my scrutineers look at the ballots and say, you know what, this is the ballots were checked off and this is how many votes you got, we're going to be better luck next. No problem. Every election, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've been scrutineering for years. Now, suddenly this election, we're not allowed to scrutinize the ballots by hand to verify what the tabulations are. And we have a crummy economy, people losing their houses, people losing their jobs, and Doug Ford wins an even larger majority. At least I'm not sure if he actually won a larger majority. I think he did.
Yep.
But there you go. So is this how an integrity vote from the public indicates that we're rewarding our politicians for behavior? The guy hasn't kept a single promise. The PCs haven't kept a single promise from last election, yet they won even a bigger majority. I don't know. I find it really difficult, especially a person who's a bit of a political junkie, and I've been following politics probably since I was 7 or 8 years old. I've never seen this before. It's unbelievable. But the one common denominator is not common denominator. The two unbelievable things here are A, he won an even bigger majority, and B, we're not allowed to count the vote. Interesting times, folks.
Well, Rob, I want to thank you for your time. We're running out of racetrack here. But on the other issue, of course, that egregious breach of your privacy, I hope we will touch base in the near future as our investigation continues there, as we find other people who had this done to them. The idea of you being a potential enemy of the state because you have a contrarian political view to the governing parties is absolutely, it's both heartbreaking and terrifying to me, and something has to be done. And it's a hell of a lot more important than people having their Tim Hortons app allegedly breaching their privacy. So we're going to keep on this file, and thank you again, Rob, for making time for us.
Thanks,
Thank
Rob.
you for all you do, folks. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The app is something that you also consent to download. So it's not even the same. It's apples to oranges, really.
Tamara, I think it's rebel derangement syndrome on part of the mainstream media. I think if, seriously, if it was the Globe and Mail or the Toronto Star or the CBC that had broken the Rob Stocky story, you would see the media snowball turn into a media avalanche. Because it's, as I can tell you, I've only done one radio interview. It was with Saga 960 with Mark Petroni. And that's it. Nothing to see here, folks. But the donut people, they're watching where you go, which I agree is offside, but nowhere near the magnitude, Tamara Ugolini, of what Rob Stocky experienced.
Agreed. And I'm interested to see how many more people come forward now thereafter to find out, was it everyone in the Freedom Convoy who was targeted and why?
And on that note, here's my worry. As you know, the donors list was made public in terms of those who even made as much as a $10 contribution to the Freedom Convoy. I wonder, and I'm just speculating, folks, I can be completely wrong here, is this the yellow pages, if you will, that law enforcement is using to go before judges and saying, this, all these pages of people, this is who we have to listen to because they were part of the Freedom Convoy, and we really know what that was really about, Your Honor. It was about an insurrection. It was about bringing down the government violently if need be. Total BS, total lies. But I wonder, is that the template they're working on?
Yeah. I mean, it's anyone's guess. That seems to be where the mainstream media and some of the politicians who spewed blatant mis and disinformation, right? That's what they like to call things that are factually incorrect. So with the smoldering, as in the arson attempt, the guns that they tried to claim were embedded into the convoy, all of these things that they used to vilify what the Canadian public were doing to simply make their voices heard. Finally, after 2 years of being entirely disregarded by people who we are supposed to elect to represent us, that they used these items to vilify them have proven in real time to be factually incorrect, blatant mis and disinformation. And who knows if they're still using those things to go in front of a judge now to get access to wiretapping.
Yeah.
It's just every day. I think I've said this before. Every day I say it can't get any crazier. Okay, we've reached peak
Don't
insanity.
You dare say that.
And then tomorrow comes.
No, you're right, Tamara. And not only all the things you just mentioned, the arson, the gun running, the violence, the vandalism, all of which was BS. I mean, for goodness sakes, I was down there for several weeks for the convoy, and you saw people picking up litter, shoveling sidewalks of snow.
Feeding homeless people.
Yeah. And as it turns out, guess what, folks? Crime actually went down in Ottawa during the Freedom Convoy. Fancy that. And yet, if you believe the mainstream media, you would think this is not a place to walk if you're walking alone. It's a danger zone. I think we have something coming up, folks. Is it the leader of the Green Party? Take it away.
Mike Schreiner.
So that everyone has an affordable place to call home.
Yeah.
That we invest in the frontline healthcare workers who care for us. And that mental health is health. And that as we build connected communities, we will fight to stop the sprawl and protect the places we love.
Stop the sprawl. This is a new one. Stop the sprawl.
To support small businesses and ensure our communities are climate ready. And so I want to take a moment to thank Green candidates in every riding in this province, because we've seen the Green vote go up in this election. Thank you for your hard work. And the candidates from all parties and all ridings, I encourage you to stay engaged. And I say to my fellow candidates here in Guelph, let's keep working together to build the green and caring city that we love here in Guelph.
Stop the sprawl. It just seems like a one-off of Stop the Spread. It's not very creative.
We need everyone to build the caring, connected, climate-ready Ontario we need. And so I say to the people of this province and in my community, over the last 4 years, I've fought hard to be your voice. And I will fight the next 4 years to be a strong opposition voice in the legislature.
I don't know. I don't hear any opposition ever in the legislature. It's all just, we agree just to varying levels of agreement.
To make sure the issues that Ontarians care about are talked about, to bring forward new solutions to the housing affordability crisis, to the cost of living crisis, to the mental health crisis, and to the climate emergency.
The climate emergency.
And make no mistake about it. We will continue to fight and work together at Queen's Park. I will work to amplify your voices because we need change, especially when it comes to acting on the climate emergency. We cannot afford to wait.
We need change. He got one seat. He has one seat. How long have the Greens sat on one seat?
So I want to congratulate Mr. Ford and the PC party on your victory tonight. The people have spoken. The people have spoken. But at this critical moment in time, I ask you to consider the financial, the economic, and the climate implications of paving over the places we love, the farmland that feeds us, and the nature that protects us.
This is a guy who doesn't care about the carbon tax that is directly harming farmers.
Yeah.
Not that he doesn't care, he actually
I say this as a
promotes it.
fellow Ontarian. The storms, floods, and extreme weather that we've experienced in the last month of this campaign alone shows us what's at stake. What's at stake for my children's future and your children's future. So I say to you, and I say to my opposition colleagues, that we have to work together to make sure this province is climate ready, to make sure that our infrastructure can withstand the storms we've experienced this past month, and to make sure that our economy is ready to be successful in the emerging markets of the new climate economy. Let's work together to
What
get
is the climate
that
economy?
done.
The climate economy sounds like it would be a giant flop.
Is that the Liberals at 8?
So I want to conclude by thanking my deputy leaders, Abhijit Mane and Beaches East York, and Diane Sachs and University Rosedale, one of my climate heroes who put forward a climate plan that I ask all parties in the legislature to steal every idea in it, because let's build the Ontario we want.
Build the Ontario we want while stopping the sprawl.
Can I say to you both and to all of our candidates across the
Do they not
province,
listen to
thank you for
themselves?
sharing our vision and increasing our vote total. And I want to give a quick shout out to my campaign manager here in Guelph, Diane Dance.
Yay. I can't listen to them. It's too much hypocrisy. These election results are shocking to me. I mean,
but the
81
pollsters were- I know, but they
to
were putting
29.
And to Becky Smith,
For
our provincial
independent,
campaign
would that be
manager, who
No, I
more
can't
than
find who that
anyone
is.
has built the Green Party into the party that it
might
is
be
today.
Norfolk Haldeman.
I saw her signs everywhere when I went down to the
To my
Friday the
family,
13th ride.
my wife
Yeah, I think
Sandy,
that's
my
who it is.
daughters Isabel and Beata, and my mom Barb. Thank you so much for always being there for me and with me.
There's a couple others.
And to all of our staff, our candidates, the volunteers, the people that power our campaigns, empowered my campaign here in Guelph, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for fighting for the Ontario you want. I will work hard for you. My commitment is I will continue to work hard for you to deliver the kind of leadership we need at Queen's Park to be your voice. Merci, Megwich, and thank you.
So Del Duca lost his spot. Oh, okay.
A very amped up Mike Schreiner
And he
speaking
defeated.
to
He was defeated.
Well, that's the Green Party leader, Mark Schreiner. Me being a bear of very little brain, Tamara, can you explain what I think is a contradiction, which is build the Ontario we want, but stop the sprawl? So
Yeah,
we're
he
stopping building, but
simultaneously-
we are building. What?
He simultaneously wants to build Ontario, but stop the sprawl, which is so reminiscent of that marketing campaign to stop the spread, right, of COVID.
Yes.
And so doesn't seem overly creative, in my opinion, to just steal stop the spread and change it into stop the sprawl, because we know that the COVID lockdowns, like stopping the spread, we were all locked down and not traveling, not leaving our houses, not doing all the things, not being consumers. And so that's very much reminiscent, I would imagine, of what something like Stop the Sprawl would look like as well.
And you know, Tamara, what hurts his credibility to me is when he refers to that storm of 2 weekends ago. It lasted, at least in our area, less than 15 minutes. And
the derecho, I think is what they ended up calling it, derecho. It wasn't a tornado,
Yeah.
even though it was really similar.
Oh, and it knocked down trees, and it was severe. But for goodness sakes, I'm tired of people conflating weather with climate.
Right.
Two different things. And the idea that a severe brief storm is another telltale example. Well, the jury's in. It's climate change. It's
There's
the
a
climate
climate
emergency.
emergency.
It's
Yeah.
the climate crisis. No, 'twas ever thus. I seem to remember there were these other residents on this planet. What were they? Oh, yes. The dinosaurs. What happened to them? Did they just build spaceships and vacate the planet? No, they had their very own climate emergency, a real one. An asteroid came out of the blue and wiped those cats out after ruling the planet for 120 million years or so. So, Tamara, please, can we stop it already whenever we see a severe weather event as pretending that
Yes.
this is a telltale example of climate change and that we are doomed unless we do something drastic?
And we've always had these these events, these severe weather events. It's not anything new. You look at the cycles that the Earth goes through and the weather patterns. This was a devastating storm. Don't get me wrong. Norwood, northern parts of Peterborough. There are some people who I think just got power back. Just a couple days. They've been almost 2 weeks without power. That's pretty severe.
Yeah.
But it's not this climate emergency. This is the ebb and the flow of our weather. And some people have some other theories as to some other things that are going on there. But to just capitalize on this one event and state that there's some sort of global climate emergency and the climate economy. What did he say? The green economy?
Yeah, I think that means a tax. That's the bottom line there. You know, Tamara, I'm only saying
Means
this
more
half
Teslas.
jokingly. Yeah, we need more. I'm only saying this half jokingly. I think if these green eco zealots were around, say, 100 years ago, they'd be saying, oh, yeah, you know that big boat, the Titanic? Iceberg. Climate
emergency. They probably were back then. It's too bad. You should have kept some papers.
Oh, yeah. How old do you think I am? That's right. I'm 111 years old, folks. But now some other news.
Let's go back to some poll
around.
stuff here.
Looks like Stephen Del Duca is losing Vaughan Woodbridge.
Yep. So he did not get the seat there. He lost to the Conservative incumbent. It looks like Doug Ford's Attorney General is in close race.
It's
with
a horse
the
race, isn't
with
it?
the Liberal Jeff Lehman.
They're separated by about 100 and odd votes, isn't it? 42% to 41.7%. So that's a horse
3%.
race.
What else do we have? Former Toronto Police Chief Mark Saunders defeated by Liberal incumbent Stephanie Bowman in Don Valley West.
Interesting. And of course, that used to be Kathleen Wynn's old riding.
Okay.
Yeah. So
The Singh's sister, I think it was, loses in Brampton. Sarah Singh.
Oh.
Yeah, Jagmeet's sister.
What
lost in
party was she
Brampton
running for, by the way?
To the PCs. Yeah, she was NDP, of course. Derek Sloan, he lost in Hastings, Lennox, and Addington.
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, Derek Sloan is a good man. Sorry to hear that result.
But we see that there is the full results here. There's one independent got a seat, and I think that is the
Bobby Ann Brady?
Yes, in Norfolk Haldimand.
Let me tell you something, folks. Last month, when Mauricio and I went down to record the Friday the 13th bike gathering, that's when tens of thousands of bikers descend upon Port Dover. One thing we noticed everywhere we go,
Which is in that riding, by the way.
which is in that riding, we saw these Bobby Ann Brady signs. I thought she was a Conservative candidate because it was a similar shade of blue, but I didn't see any PC logos on it, so I thought she was independent. And I would never base a prediction of a riding going any which way based on the number of signs I see. But her signs were everywhere. And, we got to go
Doug
right now.
Ford's giving his speech. Here
to
we go.
the Premier / Cherry Cheesecake Baker, Doug
Let's
Ford.
see how intelligent this sounds.
Most powerful Conservative politician in Canada. Let's hear from him.
The most powerful. Yes, these little songs all the time.
Boy, thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh my God.
Boy, thank you. What an incredible welcome. What?
I can't even hear.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. What a night and what a result. Together, we have done the impossible. We have made history. Wow, I'm just so grateful, so grateful. Oh, boy. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for being here.
Looks like
and
Oshawa on
thank
MVP
you
here.
for sharing this unforgettable moment. And I love you too. I'll tell you, I am so humbled by your support. I see some faces here tonight who've been with my family from day one. But what excites me the most, what just pumps me up, are all the new faces I see out there. So I am so grateful for all your support over the years. It's what keeps me going. And to the people of Ontario, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your trust. And thank you for once again putting your confidence in me. It's a responsibility that I will never take lightly. But most importantly, thank you for sharing in a vision for our great province. Sharing in a dream of a bright and prosperous future, an era of unprecedented growth and opportunity. So if you're a miner in the north who's out of work, I want you to know we're building that road to the Ring of Fire. If you've had to worry about your job at the local auto plant, I want you to know we're investing in the future of Ontario's auto sector. If you're a student who wants to work in the tech sector, we will have a job waiting for you. If you're a newcomer with a degree who can't get a job in your field, we'll make sure you can get credentials you need. This is what we're working for. This is what the Ontario dream is all about. And my promise to you, you have my word, that every single day I will get up and I will get to work. And I will do everything in my power to deliver on this dream. Because tonight's victory, it isn't about me, it isn't about the party. This victory belongs to every worker who knows that they deserve better. It belongs to every family who knows that they can dream bigger. But most of all, this victory belongs to each and every one of you. And to my rock, my wife Carla, my beautiful daughters, my entire family, thank you for always believing in me, and thank you for standing with me through thick and thin. I want to thank my entire campaign team and every candidate who ran for our party. But most importantly, I want to thank the thousands and thousands of volunteers who spent the last month hitting the doors. Together, we knocked on over 3 million doors during this campaign. That number is absolutely incredible. It's staggering. It takes an army to win a victory like this. So please know that tonight is your night. I also need to take a moment to recognize Andrea, Mike, and Stephen. It takes a lot to put your name forward in a race like this. And while we had different ideas, I truly believe that we share a desire to see Ontario succeed. And for my part, they deserve of applause. Thank you. And for my part, I did my best to run a positive campaign, to put forward a clear and consistent message, to offer a plan that everyone could get behind. I promised to build this province, to say yes to more housing, yes to attainable housing, so families once again can strive for the dream of home ownership. To say yes to building the infrastructure that keeps communities going. To put our workers to work, building the subways, the hospitals, and the highways that our growing province desperately needs. To run a smarter, more efficient government so we can reduce the unfair burdens like the license plate stickers and the gas tax. My friends, this is a plan I put forward, and I've spent the last 5 weeks traveling to every corner of this province, meeting with the hardworking women and men who are building Ontario. And I can tell you, we are ready. Ontario's ready, ready to get it done. We're ready to roll up our sleeves, to rise to the occasion, because we have the potential for greatness. We are blessed with every advantage, a bright and hardworking workforce, an abundance of natural resources. We have the critical minerals that the entire world is after. We have the capital, the technology, and the ingenuity. But most importantly, we have a vision, a dream. I see it as I look out into the crowd. I see it in your faces. I see hope. I see optimism. And your energy, your passion, it's what keeps me going every day. My friends, because it all started almost 3 decades ago, right here in Etobicoke. It started with my dad, Doug Ford Sr., my mom, Diane, and my brother, Rob, whose birthday was just last week, and who I owe so much to. I know that they're up there in heaven and they are celebrating with us tonight. Friends, it started with all of us together. And over the years, we've had our ups and downs. We've tasted victory and we've faced defeat. But through it all, we never gave up. And when I think about how far we've come, how far we've traveled together, we started as an idea, a new approach to politics. Thanks over the years. Thanks to each of you showing up at our events, volunteering at the doors, spreading our message. Thanks to you, what started as an idea turned into a movement. A political movement that changed the landscape of this province and this country forever. Together, we're reimagining our party, we're reimagining our province, and tonight, we have changed what it means to be a progressive conservative in Ontario. It's no longer about being part of the blue, the red, the orange, or green team. It's about recognizing that there's so much that unites us. This is my proudest achievement as a leader of this party, building a new coalition, expanding our base, creating a more inclusive party where everyone matters, because never in our lifetime has it been more important for a party to represent all of Ontario. Now more than ever, we need unity. The road ahead, it won't be easy. We have big challenges in front of us, an uncertain global economic climate. We are competing against other jurisdictions for every job, for every dollar of investment, but Ontario is stronger. We're absolutely unstoppable when we stand together. And so tonight, I call for unity, and whether you work on the assembly line and voted NDP your entire life or cast your last ballot for the federal Liberals, I want you to know that as long as I'm here, there's room for you in this party. I will fight for you every single day. And friends, when I think about the workers, when I think about the unions who got behind us in this election, when I think about the coalition that we've built together, it's incredible, because there was a time not long ago when some of the same people who are with us now couldn't see a home for themselves in this party. It wasn't easy. We had to admit our mistakes. We had to build back confidence, and that journey, it's not over. I'm the first to admit that there's more work to be done, but tonight's result, it proves that we're on the right track, that this approach is the right one, and tonight results proves that this is how we get things done, by being inclusive, by focusing on what unites us, and being ready to work with anyone. And with this approach together, we are unstoppable, because we're just getting started. But tonight we celebrate, because this is your night. Tonight, the people have spoken from Windsor to Cornwall, from Timmins, and thank God Timmins, to Ajax. Together, we're blazing a new trail. We're charting a new course. We're telling the world this is our time. This is our moment, because this is our province. I want to thank you, and God bless the people of Ontario. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
You know, when you look at that crowd, it definitely reflects this province and this country throughout this campaign.
I'm a little bit scared.
Just a little bit.
He spoke a lot about being there for the workers and the unions, and I mean, what was the decimation that were vaccine passports then, Mr. Ford?
Well, you know, it's funny, Tamara, because the top 8 private sector unions all supported the PC party. Not the public sector ones, mind you. They were chanting anybody but Ford. But, you know, some of the things he said in his speech, a new approach to politics, I'm wondering what that approach is, you know, giving the likes of Torstar a $500 million gift in the hope of
two
more
$500 million gifts.
Yeah. Well, that's $500 million a year to Mary Ugolini.
Wow.
You know, what they stand to make from that gambling license. And as we said at the beginning of the show, that's why you see the front page of the Star today saying, bet on blue, right on the front page. I wonder what that means. Well, we think we know what it means. Quid pro quo. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. He also said, thanks to all of you for showing up at our events. Well, not all of us. You know, as I discovered this year for the first time in a decade and a half, people like me that gave the Fords and the Ford Nation people and the Ford family a fair shake, fair media coverage. The same goes for Joe Wormington of the Toronto Sun. Suddenly we're deemed to be part of the undesirables, the bunch of yahoos, or whatever you want to call us, whatever slur you choose.
Well, and that's because more and more we're seeing you cannot criticize or scrutinize the government.
And who has that kind of attitude the most, Tamara Ugolini? It is a dictator, isn't it?
I'm wondering if it's Xi Jinping.
Yeah. And I'm not calling Doug Ford a dictator, don't get me wrong, folks, but that is the hallmark of somebody who is obsessed with power. And it's amazing how thin-skinned this man is. I don't think we've ever done hit pieces on Doug Ford, but we've gone out to interview his critics. That's called journalism. We're in the journalism business. We're not in the PC party public relations business.
Exactly.
And he has a problem with that.
Yep.
Together, we are reimagining our party. Oh, I'll say. It
Liberal
is,
light.
Exactly. That was the story of this election. And I wonder what the voter turnout is, because I truly suspect, Tamara, that many people who voted PC in 2018 stayed home. And yet, I have to give credit where credit is due. 80 was the operative number being bandied around by the pollsters. And right now, they're at 81. So they got that right. There was also a prediction, the NDP, which had 40 seats, could lose, I think the number was 12 to 15. So they're kind of on track there. They're down from 40 to 29. This is a shocker to me. To use a sports analogy, the Liberals in this election, this was the proverbial rebuilding year, so when a team is decimated and they've got to make trades and go through the draft and
I think Andrea Horvath may be giving a
okay,
speech.
then let's see if the 901 club is going to get their wish. But for a rebuilding year for the Liberals, that's a shocking number 9. I expected they would do much, much better than that. But it is a weird election.
Apparently,
to be
people
sure.
don't want COVID vaccines for their kids at school.
Who knew?
Bonjour, chers amis. Thank you, Janelle Brady, for that wonderful introduction and for all of your hard work as our party president. I want to begin by thanking every NDP candidate that stepped up and put their name on the ballot this election. You literally are the most impressive team of candidates that has ever been fielded ever in this province. I've never seen a team so smart, so accomplished, so diverse, and so dedicated, with so much energy and fight. I'm so proud of each and every one of you.
We're really excited.
And thank you to the thousands and thousands of folks that volunteered on our campaigns in every corner of Ontario. Thousands of people every single day fighting in our campaigns. Thank you so much for that hard work. Thank you so much for that hard work. In fact, and I've said this over the last couple of days as we've been going through the province, you literally are the beating heart of our party and our movement. You're so wonderful. And to our awesome campaign staff, hello. Hello. On the ground and at our headquarters, what an amazing team. Let's give it up for them. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And you know what? My special thanks to the folks who voted for our amazing candidates. So many people voted for our amazing candidates for good reason, because they're amazing candidates. And so thank you, thank all of you for making your ballot, marking your ballot for hope, marking your ballot for optimism, marking your ballot for what we can do together. And thank you so much to the millions of Ontarians who made their voices heard in this election. They actually made their voices heard. To every Ontarian, regardless of who you voted for, thank you for caring. Thank you for caring about our province and our future. I'd like to take a minute to thank Stephen Del Duca, Mike Schreiner, and Doug Ford for representing their parties well. Everyone who puts their name on a ballot is stepping up and making our democracy stronger. There's no doubt about it. But You're probably not surprised to know that I could not be more proud of the vision that we put before Ontario, we put a vision forward of a province where everyone can get the health care that they need when they need it, close to home. A strong, universal healthcare system without painful waits and hallway medicine, where we respect and value our incredible healthcare heroes. Let's give it up for our healthcare heroes. And not only where we respect them, but where we have their back, like they always have our backs. That's how much we have to respect our frontline healthcare workers. Where we have affordable dental care for every Ontarian, mental health and pharmacare into OHIP, seniors care that puts support and respect for our loved ones ahead of corporate profits. The top-notch public education our kids deserve in good schools with enough caring adults. A plan to tackle the crises in housing and affordability, get wages up and rents down. A new way forward where we respect and fulfill the treaties. Working shoulder to shoulder with Indigenous people to fix what's broken, from clean water to livable housing. Urgently tackling the climate crisis, urgently tackling the climate crisis. Doing our part to ensure that the next 7 generations have a healthy planet and a bright future, full of opportunity. And doing so much more to build a province without hate, bigotry, or discrimination of any kind. We will never stop fighting to make these goals a reality for people in Ontario. In every corner of this province, people are counting on us to be on their side. And I know, without a doubt, the team of New Democrats elected tonight will work hard every single day for you. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's true. New Democrats will always stand up for everyday working families. Always. For every person who needs support from their government. For every Ontarian trying to build a better life for themselves and their family. Everyone trying to build a stronger foundation and a brighter future for the next generation. And so tonight the people have spoken, and they've sent a very clear message. The majority of Ontarians have not endorsed or supported the Conservative government. And I just want to say that Doug Ford needs to realize that. He needs to understand that Ontarians did not vote for more cuts and privatization of the things that matter the most to all of us. Ontarians did not vote for more painful waits and more hallway medicine, more horrific mistreatment of our loved ones in seniors' care, or for more of our kids' schools to crumble into disrepair. That's not what Ontarians voted for. They did not vote for more of their friends and neighbors to slip through the cracks, to struggle and scrape by, living paycheck to paycheck, or slip into poverty. They didn't vote for an even less affordable province, where the hope of buying a home or even renting a decent place you can afford becomes more and more of a pipe dream. The majority of Ontarians did not vote for big highways to big houses that no one can afford. They didn't vote for our most vulnerable to be trapped in legislated poverty, They did not vote for a government that ignores its treaty obligations or ignores the rising tide of hate, division, and violence targeting so many communities in our province. And they didn't vote for a government that ignores science, carves up the greenbelt, and makes the climate crisis worse instead of better. And you know what? These are the worries that people have shared with me throughout the years. And that's why I have fought so hard for them. And you know what? Respecting the voters means listening to all that they tell us. And this is something I want to remind Mr. Ford about, that respecting the voters is about listening to all of what they tell us. So I'm going to save my final thanks for my family, my friends, and the people of Hamilton. I love you too. I love you too. And my commitment to you is never going to waver. And I'm going to keep working to earn your confidence each and every day. I'm going to keep doing that. But tonight, it's time for me to pass the torch, to pass the baton, to hand off the leadership of the NDP. And you know what? It makes me sad, but it makes me happy because our team is so strong right now. Our team is so strong. You know, I brought a tissue, and my grandma would have normally tucked it under her sleeve, but my sleeve's too loose, and so I had to tuck it into my belt. But I'm not shedding tears of sadness. I'm shedding tears of pride. Look at you. Look at all of you. Look at what we have done together. Look at what we have done together. Honestly. Together, my friends, we have built a party that is stronger and more ready to govern than ever before. And you know what? You know what? We didn't get there this time. We didn't get there this time. But just know that we will continue to be the powerful champions people need us to be in order to fight Doug Ford's cuts. And you know what? We are once again going to be your official opposition. And I can guarantee you, Ontarians, that as your official opposition, we will work hard every single day to fix what matters most to the people of our province of Ontario. You know why? Do you know why we're going to do that work? Because your priorities were our priorities before the election, and they were our priorities during the election, and they will be our priorities after the election, because that's who we are as New Democrats. And so I want to end by guaranteeing every Ontarian that we will always, always be working for you. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup. Miigwech Nyaweh.
You heard it there live, folks. The Steeltown scrapper has no fight left.
So tearful.
Angela Horvath is passing the torch. She will no longer be the leader of the provincial NDP after a historic last time out in 2018.
Well,
40
Tamara, again, explain things to me in this most bizarre of provincial election campaigns I can never imagine or have ever witnessed. Andrea Horvath said, you're speaking to her your NDP team. You're so smart, so accomplished, so diverse, of course. Diversity is always part of that. But so smart and so accomplished that you went from a 40-seat opposition party to a 29-seat opposition party. You lost 11 seats. Now, granted, one of the questions in this election, according to the pollsters, who is going to come in second place, given that, well, again, we're giving credit where credit is due. They got it right. Right now, 82 seats for the Progressive Conservatives. But I don't think this is a cause for celebration that, yeah, you maintained opposition status, but Tamara losing 11 seats, and she's crying, but not tears of sadness, but tears of pride. Well, Pride Month did kick off yesterday. Maybe that's what she meant.
You have to squish all the virtues into the speech.
Oh, yeah.
Everything has to fit right in there.
But do you, I don't think this is an accomplishment, but she has at least done the right thing. They say, 3 strikes and you're out. This was Andrea Horvath's 4th campaign. I can think of no other major political party in Canadian history where the same leader went up to bat for a 5th time, and that trend will continue because she says she's going to pass the torch, which is probably just a bunch of burning embers right now. When she says, look at all we've done together, again, you went down 40 to 29. This is a disaster.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's much that they did together. I think the proof is in the pudding that she's stepping down or she's passing the torch rather.
Yep.
And so that speaks to maybe how accomplished the New Democratic Party was this last campaign and previous 4 years. I'm interested to see who the next leader will be. Do you have any insights on what that might look like?
Believe it or not, there is some speculation. I don't understand this, but these days, as you said earlier, anything's possible. Just when you think it can get any weirder. Yeah. But there was talk about Andrea Horwath running for mayor of Hamilton, which she very well might win. But Jagmeet Singh stepping down as the federal NDP leader and becoming the provincial one. I don't know how that's going to translate into 29, 40 seat, whatever the number is, but I don't understand the rationale, but the political horse whisperers were talking about that. Maybe it's Jagmeet Singh realizing that he can never be the government in Ottawa or even the official opposition.
He's getting booed out of everywhere. He's getting booed by by Sikhs.
Indeed. But on the other hand, if he leaves early, i.e. doesn't put in those 6 years, he doesn't get that cushy pension.
The pension that he's using.
Why
he's propping up.
Right.
The
so as much as Jagmeet Singh is like down with the revolution, man, well, business is business, So we have to take care of the Singh family. Now, the other thing, of course, like Mike Schreiner of the Green Party, she said that as opposition, they'll be tackling the climate crisis. Again, the climate crisis. I wonder, Andrea, would that include having your 53-seat campaign bus turned off while you're at the leadership debate? That was the one you covered for us, Tamara Ugolini, because that kept running for hours.
Well, I heard on the way here, actually, on the radio, they were saying that her campaign bus was parked outside of the venue and waiting for everyone to arrive. So were they idling? Because I thought idling was what contributed to, what about the ozone layer?
Yeah.
Whatever happened to the ozone layer? We don't hear about it anymore.
Golly, it sounds though that Andrea Horwath is a contributor to the climate crisis. But one other thing
She
that
has a
gets-
heavy carbon footprint.
Oh boy. But you know what, folks? Again, when it comes to the issue of talking the talk and walking the walk, she was talking about building a province without hate and bigotry. And that's very interesting because I'll tell you, not far from the Rebel News headquarters is the Toronto riding of Toronto St. Paul's, which since its inception has always gone liberal. That's going back to the 1990s when that riding was created. And in 2018, someone by the name of Jill Andrew with the NDP, they went from third to winning the riding. She's leading right now. And you want to talk racism? You want to talk hatred? Well, you're talking Jill Andrew. And we have the video evidence. It's a video we aired last week. Why don't we just check out Jill Andrew, and you tell me if this is a paragon of, the kind of diversity you want in your political party. David Menzies for Rebel News here in Midtown Toronto. Well, folks, it seems that the MPP for the riding of Toronto St. Paul, that would be Jill Andrew, she is in hot water yet again. A Toronto Sun story recently revealed that Jill Andrew has allegations of anti-Semitism leveled against her and also harassment of staff. And incredibly, these allegations go back some 2 years ago. But NDP party leader Andrea Horwath, she says this is all news to her. Then again, folks, Andrea Horwath has always inexplicably defended Jill Andrew. Do you remember some 6 years ago, Jill Andrew awarded then Toronto Police Chief Mark Saunders with her 2016 Coon Award. Can you imagine awarding a black police chief a Coon Award? Absolutely despicable. And when Andrea Horwath was asked about that horrible remark, that racist remark, here's what the NDP leader said back then, quote, Andrew was just using language employed in the black community to show displeasure with black leaders not felt to be doing enough to address black community issues, end quote. Can you imagine? I guess there's a different set of standard for racism even going back to 2016. By the way, folks, if the name Jill Andrew rings a bell, it might be because of a commentary I recorded back in 2016. For some reason, it is the most watched video I have ever produced for Rebel News, receiving almost 2 million views. You see, Jill Andrew back then, she was upset about an ad campaign by the Toronto Transit Commission that was using thin ballet dancers. No, I'm not making it up. Check out the video evidence.
Oh, goody. Jill Andrew, the anti-body shaming crusader, is at it again. This time, Jill's upset with an ad campaign running in Toronto's public transit system. The offending ads are for the National Ballet of Canada, and it showcases dancers doing their shtick in and around transit vehicles. So, what's not to love? Well, according to our plus-size social justice warrior, this ad campaign promotes unhealthy body image stereotypes. Yeah, imagine that. Photographs depicting physically fit dancers is somehow triggering Jill Andrew. Here's a clip of Jill in action when she delivered a speech on fat shaming and what she calls the thin epidemic.
I have come to see now just how fat and black embodiment, how excesses of fatness and blackness make some people uncomfortable, especially those who were born and raised on the milk and honey, the Western comforts of Eurocentric and thin-centric body and beauty ideals.
Yikes. But fear not, folks, because Jill does have some tips on how to combat Eurocentric fat shaming.
One of the tips is, when I get out of the shower, buck naked, I just stand there and say, in my best Broadway voice, I'm a big, bright, shining star, and I'm gonna shine forever.
I think I feel my white privilege shrinking right now.
I mean, her rant doesn't make sense at all. She's against body shaming, yet she, as a larger person, is body shaming thin people. And we are living in a thin epidemic? Oh, really? And excesses of fatness and blackness make some people uncomfortable? Really? I mean, what does race have to do with obesity in the first place? In any event, we're going to go into Jill Andrews' campaign office. She won this riding in 2018. It was the first time the riding ever went NDP. Typically, the NDP finishes third, but I suspect in 2018, the Progressive Conservatives and the Liberals split the vote, and miraculously, Jill Andrew came up the middle as the victor. In any event, I have reached out to her and to her communications person. They've never gotten back to me, so we're going to go across the street and see if anyone in her office will come on camera.
Who did you say you were?
David Menzies with Rebel News, and I've been reaching out to Jill Andrew, and it's about the allegations of anti-Semitism and harassment.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing there?
I'm Jill's campaign manager here.
Fantastic. Would you want to go on camera, sir? Or?
No, though I suspect that I already am. The positioning of your cell phone.
Well, you're good.
I know. So here's what I would appreciate. Okay. We're just working in here. We do ask the folks who come into our office to mask, and we don't have a comment for you.
Okay, all right then. Okay, well, thank you for your time anyways. I've put out my coordinates to her, and if she changes her mind in the next several days. Anything to say about these allegations of
I have no
anti-Semitism?
comment for you, no.
No. Okay then, you have a good day.
You too.
Thank you. Well, there you go, folks. We did try to get their side of the story. They were not interested, and it's too bad. I really did want to hear from the self-described black, queer, fat activist.
A big, bright, shining star!
But when it came to getting anyone on her campaign on camera, well, fat chance. For the Rebel News, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies. Can you believe it, Tamara Ugolini? That woman won in 2018, and she's leading right now. What a weirdo. That's politics for you. It's inexplicable that, to give a so-called Coon Award to a black man and to have Andrea Horwath dismiss it, oh, well, that's just that black stuff they do in the black community. Nothing to see here.
Not at all racist.
No. Appalling now allegations of anti-Semitism, harassment, and somehow, and again, I think we're seeing it again, this is a traditional liberal riding where the Progressive Conservatives are doing well, but not well enough to win, but well enough to split the vote for the NDP candidate, Jill Andrew.
She is leading currently.
By about, 1,000 votes?
Yes. Not far behind her is Nathan Stahl, who's equally as cringe.
No, nothing could be equal to Jill Andrew. And
you're right.
It's a cautionary tale. Pay attention to these politicians, to what's in their closet, from what they've said, from what they've done in the past. And again, the only reason we played that again, folks, is because Andrea Horwath was talking about building a province without hate and bigotry. You just saw hate and bigotry on display big time with Jill Andrew, who might be, again, the MPP for Toronto St. Paul's. Absolutely unbelievable. By the way, guys, I had a little bird in my ear say that Del Duca might be delivering a concession speech.
We may have missed Del Duca's speech.
Oh, no.
But since his party didn't even achieve official party status, I don't think that is an overly large deal. What did they get? 7? What do they have right now?
8 seats,
8 seats.
Yeah. So, well, at least they're beyond. Well, actually, that's not true. I believe there was a version of the old Pontiac Montana.
Here we have it. Hold on,
minivan.
he's still going.
There you go. Okay.
Thank you for this. Thank you for your incredible work. Thank you for always being there for me and for each other. And I look forward to doing whatever I can to continue to support our party and build an Ontario that is always a place to grow. Thank you so very much. Really appreciate it.
But they didn't grow. That shine, there's a lot of shine happening in this visual here. Oh, he has put his mask on. There you go.
Put the mask on.
Yes, please, my wife, let me put a mask on to talk to you. Oh, that guy isn't, but maybe he didn't expect to be on camera. Oh, it looked like they were going in for some kissing there.
Oh, yeah.
With their masks.
That could be
very
a
liberal
little
of them.
claustrophobic. Tamara, you are, I think, an expert on the whole COVID-19. You study so much. You watch so many incredibly boring, mundane speeches, and you have a great talent of plucking out the red flags. Why is it that it looked like almost everybody there was wearing a mask, including Stephen Del Duca, except when he goes to the podium? Does the COVID virus respect a concession speech by a politician, so when he removes a mask, he won't get infected, but once the mask is over, you better get that mask back on?
It's a very smart virus. It seems to really follow the science, and that's the science that only the Ontario Science Table puts out. That's the holy grail of the science, and the virus just somehow knows what is safe and what isn't safe, and it inherently can determine that you would be safe while you're delivering a speech, but then you're not when you're not talking anymore.
Right.
So then you have to wear a mask.
And we're now seeing further evidence in just the last day or two, proving that those cities that were very compulsive with mask mandates versus those that were lax, there was no statistical difference.
Masks literally did nothing.
Yeah.
No.
And still, and by the way, I've been to a few places in Toronto where there's no public mandate anymore. The chief medical health officer lifted the mask mandate as of March 21st, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And their own store policy to the customers is you got to mask up or get the hell out of the store.
There's a few places still. They're emotional support masks, right?
Yeah.
It makes everybody feel better.
Yeah.
And they feel safe. But they do little else in terms of actually stopping a seasonal respiratory virus. Tom Marazzo, he was the Ontario Party candidate in Peterborough Kawartha. I went to cover an event because it was advertised as an all-party debate.
Okay.
And the New Blue and the Ontario Party, and then, you had your Green, your NDP, and your Progressive Conservative and Liberal. So it was supposed to be quite a robust debate with 6 candidates, one of the only ones I've heard of this whole election trail happening. And then, of course, Tom Marazzo was prevented access into the debate because of the mask mandate that they had in effect at the debate.
Really? Wait, what was the debate? Oh, sorry,
It
what was the date of this debate?
This was to take place on Monday. So what was Monday? May 30th,
Well, so we're done
31st?
month of May, and the mandates,
This is
as we
just
mentioned,
earlier this week.
So March 21st, the mandates are off.
The mandates have been over for 2 months at least.
So that's ridiculous.
Yeah, and so they're still heavily enforced and arbitrarily, right, on the whim of whoever wants to enforce them, I suppose. But someone like Tom Marazzo with the Ontario Party, they campaign. Their platform is anti-mandate. So how would someone give in to the entire basis of their platform to mask to debate other party leaders? And then actually I spoke to someone just outside of the event thereafter, and they said that the mayor, who was the one person that got very stern with Tom Marazzo, that the mayor actually removed their mask in the debate to deliver a speech or some remarks.
Oh, was that against the rules?
I think it was the science said that he was safe in those few moments. And it's just so nonsensical.
Tamara, I don't think I ever told you this story, but at the height of the COVID madness, this is going back to, I think, late 2020, I'm driving down Yonge Street north of Finch, and I'm passing by a bus stop, and I would have pulled over and interviewed the guy if I had time, but I was on the way to an assignment. And there was a man waiting for the bus with his mask on, with a slit cut in the mask so he could smoke a cigarette. And I thought, I don't believe what I'm seeing. Here's a guy outdoors. He's the only one at the bus stop, wearing a mask, which we know doesn't work, but he's cut a slit in it to further reduce its workability, if it even worked in the first place, to ingest a product that, if used as directed, will shorten your life or even kill you.
They obviously care about health. Health is their number one priority. There was a guy, I don't know if we can find the clip because it's from late summer 2020, but there was a protest happening in Coburg, and there was a gentleman who was walking by wearing a mask, literally smoking through his mask.
Oh.
And you could see the smoke. He would inhale and then he would exhale, and you could see the smoke through the mask. And it just shows you that if you can see the physical smoke, how do you think an invisible, minuscule, extremely tiny micron-sized virus is going to be stopped by that same mask?
Great point, Tamara Ugolini. But you know what? Stephen Del Duca must be a devastated man. He did not win the riding of Vaughan Woodbridge. He didn't hold the seat. He was a new candidate there, so the incumbent PC candidate held on bigly. Also, well, I'll give him this. He grew the party by one seat from 7 to 8. Technically, there are some minivans on the market that seat 8. So it's still the minivan party. He couldn't grow it to the mini bus party.
Leader.
That was, I think, the objective in what is, as they say in the sporting world, a rebuilding year. But that is devastating. We got to the speech late. I'm not sure if he has stepped down. He said as of today in the media that no matter what happens tonight, he's not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think he's going somewhere. Maybe in the morning we have the press conference for the Adios Muchachos speech. But this surprises me. I thought they'd get to double digits. I thought they'd get to official party status, which is 12. That's not a big benchmark, especially given that just 4 years ago you were a majority government, the Liberals.
Right.
What is your take? What happened to the Liberals again?
It just goes to show that the pendulum always comes back, right? The pendulum will swing one way and it will always come back. And so I think that we're seeing that people were absolutely devastated under the Wynne government. And I am just shocked really to see that the Ford Conservatives have upped their seat count despite the horrific knee-jerk reactions that they imposed on Ontarians for 2 solid years, and to kick out every MPP from the caucus that spoke out on behalf of their constituents who were struggling and suffering, and many still are. And none of the campaign trail on all of the parties except for the Ontario Party and the New Blue and some of the other fringe parties, no one actually campaigned on anything to do with COVID. They didn't want to right their wrongs. They didn't want to speak on anything COVID related, and they instead focused on the fallout while also simultaneously not relating it back to devastating COVID policies. So,
but you know, Tamara, speaking of COVID and the Liberals, maybe this was a very big misstep that came back to haunt Stephen Del Duca, and that was that pledge about having kids mask up in schools.
And the vaccine, mandating the vaccine for the school attendance.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think that was obviously, an appeal to, I guess, the COVID Karens out there, and apparently didn't work.
And I guess maybe there's not as many COVID Karens as Del Duca was under the impression
Thankfully.
of. Yes, very thankfully. Or maybe there are, but it's not child specific, right? Because we've seen with the uptake of the vaccines in the children anyway, the children aren't at risk here. And it's always been a very targeted, specific demographic that's been at risk. And for them to continue to tout following the science and yet simultaneously completely disregarding the actual science, I hope that that's an indication that more people are waking up, but simultaneously not, because look at how many people voted for Doug Ford. And I think that people are still really hung up on the idea of voting strategically.
Yes.
Instead of voting with your conscience and voting who you think represents you the best, it's a vote to make sure that the other party doesn't get in. And I wonder if that could be part of the reason why you see such a strong conservative government.
Well,
or
remember
Dominion voting machines.
But remember, you called them a conservative government. The official name is Progressive Conservative. I think they're a lot more on the progressive side these days than the conservative side.
Mhm.
That's not a true conservative government. If that had been Rob Ford at the helm of this government, this party, it's a different kettle of fish.
Mhm.
You know, the late
That's fair.
great Rob Ford, and we've certainly learned in the last 4 years that Doug Ford, sadly, is not Rob Ford.
No.
A lot of people thought they were interchangeable, myself included, but in the last 4 years, we have discovered they only share the same surname, and that's about it. Well, Tamara, I guess there are the results as we bid adieu. The PC's at 82.
Oh, we want to go back to a Del Duca clip before we wrap up.
We're going to go back to a Del Duca clip. Sorry, folks, and let us run that right now.
Now, to be clear, this isn't the outcome that we had hoped for and worked hard for. And yes, it's true, I am disappointed to not have been successful here in my home community, my home riding of Vaughan Woodbridge. And I just want to say again, I have no doubt that the women and men that Ontario Liberals have elected to the legislature will do their part. In fact, will do more than their part to help grow a new and energetic progressive movement here in Ontario. It will, however, be a movement that will be led by a new leader. Earlier this evening, I informed our party president of my decision to step down from the leadership of our party, and I have asked him to meet with the executive to set a leadership contest for as soon as is reasonable.
Well, I
there you
beg your
go.
pardon, folks. I misspoke. We got to the conference late, and I didn't hear the real meat and potatoes, which is indeed Stephen Del Duca stepping down. He had no choice. I mean, he grew the party by 1 seat, didn't win his own riding. I'm sorry, you couldn't go back to the polls
you have
in 20,
to. Leave with some,
26.
try to have some dignity, I
Yeah.
guess, with your tail between your legs. Bye,
Indeed.
Del Duca.
And, you know, and to tell you the truth, Andrea Horvath aside, Tamara, that is the new way in politics these days. It's essentially one and you're done. It used to be you'd get at least 2 kicks at the can. Sometimes you do. But as we've seen at the federal conservative party, Aaron O'Toole, Andrew Scheer, it was one and done in both cases. And we've seen that happen with Stephen Del Duca. And really, there was no other way out to grow the party just by 1 seat, fail by 4 seats to get official party status, having the leader without a seat.
Right.
Where's the upside?
No, how do you do that? We actually have one other super chat that we missed earlier. So $5 from Donald Drump. Thank you.
Thank you.
Where do you find the vote numbers for other parties? So we were following. There's a few different links that you can go to, but we were following the CBC News tool at newsinteractives.cbc.ca.
And we may as well, and the viewers may as well. You're paying for it, whether you want to or not.
Yeah, exactly. That's your tax dollars hard at work. So go to the CBC. And then can we pull it up on screen for a moment there, producers? The tracker that we were watching earlier. Just give us a moment. I'll just show you on screen where you can find the other parties. Yep, so there's Ontario votes. And if you just look in the middle of the screen, show all results, and then you can scroll through and see the other seats that were obtained. So there's 1 independent, and then if you close out of that, you can go down by the ridings. There's an interactive map. Yeah, right there. And if you zoom in, you can see by the color coding where that independent won. So I believe that independent is the riding of Norfolk Haldimand right at the very bottom.
Yeah,
you'll see
Haldimand, Norfolk, Bobby Ann Brady.
Yeah, you'll see it's a different color than the rest. Yeah, right there. Bobby Ann Brady appears to have won in that particular riding as an independent.
Congratulations.
Over the Progressive Conservative by almost 4%, 4.5%. 2,000 votes. So that's, I think, pretty substantial. But anyway, so you can go back and search out all the fun things in using this interactive tool from the CBC with our tax dollars.
Well, there you have it. What a note to wrap on. So that's your Ontario 2022 election. join us in 4 years for 2026. And we'll see what happens then. Certainly there'll be 2 new leaders with the Liberal and the NDP party. I don't think I've ever seen that. The two,
both, yeah.
The second and third place leaders both resigning on the same night, but a little history there. So we're going to sign off, folks. I want to thank our super producers, Olivia and Efren. Thank you so much for coming in all the way from Coburg.
Likewise,
Tamara
David.
Ugolini. I'm David Menzies. Hope you all had a good evening. And as always, folks, stay sane.
I'm going to save my final thanks for my family, my friends, and the people of Hamilton. I love you too. And my commitment to you is never going to waver. And I'm going to keep working to earn your confidence each and every day. I'm going to keep doing that. But tonight, it's time for me to pass the torch, to pass the baton, to hand off the leadership of the NDP. And you know what? It makes me sad, but it makes me happy because our team is so strong right now. So strong. You know, I brought a tissue, and my grandma would have normally tucked it under her sleeve, but my sleeve's too loose, and so I had to tuck it into my belt. But I'm not shedding tears of sadness. I'm shedding tears of pride. Look at you. Look at all of you. Look at what we have done together. Look at what we have done together. Honestly. Together, my friends, we have built a party that is stronger and more ready to govern than ever before.